No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And we got a good friend of the show.
Yep.
Back in the building.
Yep.
Vlad.
What's good?
And he's got something to say about my Birkenstocks.
I know. I just noticed you wearing Birkenstocks. And I have not seen a pair of Birkenstocks like actually physically in probably about a good 20 years.
Let me tell you, my girl bought me these for, I don't know, my birthday maybe 6 months ago or something. And I just very rarely feel the urge to wear anything else, especially when I'm coming in here.
Really? Okay.
And it's like I'm in a very controlled environment. I know I'm not going to encounter any rain. I'm not going to have to like kick somebody's head in. It's just like a very chill environment. And if I'm, especially today, I'm sitting on camera for like 8 hours maybe. Mm-hmm. It's so comfortable. And when I wear shoes, it's just a little bit of like dampness, a little bit of crampedness on my foot. I don't love it.
Yeah, I mean you're easing into the whole dad thing here. You're really embracing it, just jumping right in.
And sometimes I'll be taking a photo with a rapper, and the photo, like they have amazing $1,200 Gucci shoes on or whatever, and I just feel like wow, like my shoes really look like nothing in comparison. But Cole Bennett has essentially arrived at the same conclusion years before me. Really, he's been rocking nothing but Birkenstocks for years.
It's worked for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just at a certain point, comfort just seems like it's the most important thing.
Okay, yeah, not really my thing, but I'm also a sneaker guy. So,
but you've been dripping harder and harder and harder as you get older. Like I just had Bizarre in here, and he brought up you rocking Gucci polos as if that was like the Vlad thing. Like that's when he because his producer. I said something about how his producer looked like you, and then. He's like, yeah, all we got to do is get him a Gucci polo. I was like, okay, that's synonymous with Vlad now. Okay. I like that.
Yeah, I got some Gucci polos. I got some, I got my closet is huge these days. Like my new closet is like.
Can you pull the mic in just a little bit?
Yeah, like my new closet is like twice the size of the studio here.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
My closet is 1/8 of the size of this studio.
Yeah, no, it's insane. The island alone is like. Massive.
Really?
Like the island in the middle, and it wraps around. Yeah.
So, I mean, as guys in our position, it's like you're always trying to figure out like what can I spend money on that will actually give me a return, that will actually make me happy. Once you kind of have enough money, you kind of got to think like what's going to actually add some utility to my life. Is clothes something that you feel like genuinely gives you a little bit of happiness?
Oh, yeah. No, I love clothes, man. But I grew up, I couldn't afford none of this shit. You know what I'm saying? I had no Gucci in high school or even college, or even really when I started my professional career. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the fact that I can afford whatever I want to buy right now. I could go into a Louis store and just like we went to Paris and like went to the Louis headquarters out there, right? Champs-Élysées, and they had like everything because usually like Louis Vuitton shoes like everything is sold out,
right?
Like, you can never get anything you want. And it just so happens at the headquarters, like we got the saleswoman that just like, whatever I want. I buy like 2 sweatsuits, a jacket, sweater. I just went crazy with it. But I mean, I could never afford this shit when I was younger. So now that I actually can, and it's not, because my thing was I was never going to buy some shit when I couldn't really afford it. Like go into credit card debt or knowing that like, okay, if I buy this, my rent might be a little sketchy next month or whatever else. It's like, so I just never wore any of that shit as I was a mixtape DJ and as I was coming up. So at the point that I was actually comfortable and spending $5,000-$10,000 on clothes really had no impact on my financial well-being. It was like, okay, now I could actually buy it. And being that not only am I a CEO, but I'm also talent.
Right.
And I'm in front of the camera sometimes and taking photos. It's a business expense.
That makes sense.
I have a wardrobe, I have a wardrobe budget essentially every month through the company, so I don't have to personally buy the stuff. The company actually buys it for me. So. Oh,
wow, that's smart.
Yeah.
Okay, I never thought about that angle. Although I guess I always do put it on the business account. I just don't even think about the reason why I'm doing it. But, okay, because we have this conversation a lot about jewelry, that kind of thing. Is that something that you at a certain point, well, I mean, you got a nice watch on, I'm sure that's cost a pretty penny, but is that something that you kind of chose to, at a certain point, like, all right, I'm going to just sort of lay off the jewelry and let that be a young man's game?
Nope. I'm still going. I'm looking at watches right now.
Okay, but you're a watch guy, not a chain guy.
No, I mean, I have a couple of chains, like a couple of Cuban links, but I don't really wear them that much because I really don't know how. I mean, I have a Cuban link chain that like is it's not that big, but it's a nice size. It hangs maybe to like around here, and it's maybe about like that thick, and it's solid. And it just sort of hurts my neck when I wear it a lot. I can't just wear it around all the time. So when I see these dudes that have these chains on and they're rocking it all day, like in the house, either they're hollow or they just have some sort of neck muscle buildup that
it seems
I
like
just
a
never
burden.
have.
Like it just, I feel like I would be bringing something into my life, spending a significant amount of money on something that would then cause me pain and problems.
Right.
And I would have to be much more considerate of where I was going, and even like security at my house. Like, you know, is somebody going to run up in my house and take my chain, whatever.
You
like,
also you got to have insurance.
Yeah, even that.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Chains, I have some. I'm not real huge on them, but watches I like. But also you got to understand with watches, is that if you buy certain brands, you know, the kind of brands, you know, Rolex, Audemars, Patek Philippe, Richard Mille, it's pretty much it. Those brands, and if you leave it plain Jane, it's not gonna, I mean, it is gonna appreciate over time. So when you do sell it, you could usually get what you paid for it back. So it's kind of like a way to park your money in something that's a little cooler than just money in your bank account. Right. You see what I'm saying? Definitely. Like I've never, all those brands, whenever I've like decided like I'm tired of this watch, I'm going to buy a different watch, I've usually traded in for the amount that I paid for it. Right. So.
But you see those tweets from Ice-T basically talking about how all these LA veteran rappers have, you know, made the conscious decision not to rock large amounts of jewelry. I'm not sure how often that really is true, but I think if you look at people like Snoop and stuff, I think when they're on some casual shit, when they're moving around, that probably is true. And seeing the PNB Rock situation, what are your thoughts on the level of precaution that a rapper or a public personality should take on when they buy something like that?
I mean, there's no problem with having a $1 million chain if you wear, you know, if you wear it for certain times and places, and if you have security to protect it. If you're going to the Grammys, wearing a $1 million chain is probably not a big deal. You don't hear of anyone getting shot at the Grammys, or the Oscars, or the Emmys, or anything of that sort. But with the PNB Rock situation, I don't know the exact details, but the impression I've been getting is that he was rocking a lot of his big chains at the Roscoe's in South Central, which is a Roscoe's that I would not go to. I've known about this Roscoe's forever. Like if I go to Roscoe's, I'll usually go to the one in Hollywood. Right, which is like in a residential area. You never really hear of anything really happening there.
I've been to that one a bunch of times. When I lived in Long Beach, I went to that one a bunch of times.
I've been to the Inglewood one, which is, you know, that one, just because I know Inglewood, because I've stayed in Inglewood for quite a while, but like I wouldn't go to the South Central one. I definitely would not go there with a bunch of jewelry on. At all. And also, in terms of the way I move around, no one around me would ever Instagram our location. And tag the location of where I was. Like I would never, if I ever take a picture and I post it, it's because I've been gone from that location for like 6-7 hours. Right.
I noticed you just left Dallas and said,
so I was in Dallas.
Great time in Dallas. I'm like, I had no idea he was in Dallas.
I was in Dallas. You know, Warren Sapp interviewed Michael Irvin for Vlad TV, and when I was in Dallas, I wasn't Instagramming. Like I posted a picture after I was like on the plane going back to LA, just because who knows who might have a problem with me in Dallas, and they could see a location, they recognize it, and next thing you know, you have a problem on your hands. So
it definitely becomes an issue though too, because like my girl, I mean, I feel like I don't have the same level of security fears that somebody like PNB Rock probably should have had, rocking all that jewelry or whatever. But I see it with my girl all the time, where she's having coffee at some fucking cafe when we're on a trip. She wants to take a photo of it, whatever. Granted, like this is happening in like tourist areas, you know, there's areas that are very, very safe in general. But I mean, you know, that's a real thing that the average woman wants to do. They want to represent their lifestyle. This is very much like the culture of being a woman in America these days.
The food arrives. The first thing the girl does is you don't actually taste the food. You got to pull out the camera, and you got to.
I'm very used to not being able to eat my food right away, having to wait like 5 to 10 seconds so you can get a couple shots.
And I'm not like that with anyone in my life.
Really?
Nah.
Because you're lucky, because you've always had the very clear cut separation between your content and your personal life. For me, it's always been very, very intertwined. And that's something that if you have the option of not using your personal life as content, I think that's something that as a content creator, you should very much take that opportunity because it's a much simpler thing to be able to go into work and you interview a couple people and then you go home and those interviews have nothing to do with your home life. Right. For the most part, that's true for me, but quite often there's situations where it's like I'm going home and all of a sudden I'm getting grilled about something that was said on the podcast or whatever. You know, it's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep, not me.
Yeah.
Not me.
For sure. But okay, so in terms of the PNB Rock thing though, you never interviewed him? Did you have any kind of contact with him ever?
No, none whatsoever. We actually wanted to interview him. I know Academics interviewed him recently. Right. He was going to put me in contact with him. That never really got off the ground. And I was a fan of his work.
Right.
Selfish, I thought was a dope song. And then there was a bunch of songs I remember with features and collabs that he did that I thought was dope. But no, I've had no interaction with him whatsoever, except from like a fan perspective, as you know, a lot of the rest of us.
Right. Do you think that you could see some sort of like East Coast, West Coast beef sort of sizzling up as a result of the fact that this is almost starting to look like a pattern where rappers come to LA and you know, it's like a random guy, but there's been a clip that's been going around on Instagram of like guy from the East Coast says that he's going to start killing LA rappers. And I'm like, this seems kind of irresponsible that we're even paying attention to a random guy saying that he's going to kill LA rappers. But you could kind of imagine that to some not so bright person, they might actually start to see the world that way and think that the East Coast versus the West Coast thing could be a real thing.
But there's no real representative from either coast that are beefing with each other. This is just random robberies.
That's true.
With people who are not, by the time you find out who that person is, who did the murder, they're in prison.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Pop Smoke's killers. Do you know who they are by name? I don't.
I think I did at one point.
Maybe at one, you know what I'm saying? But these are not celebrities.
Right.
These are just some little, dirty kids who are trying to come up off some jewelry and end up doing life in prison.
Right.
Which is, I don't know, just the dumbest thing in the world. I remember I was hanging out with Warren Sapp yesterday before for the interview that he did, and we were just talking about that, and he said, for anyone who is about to do something that's going to land him in prison for a long time, tell that person to go into their toilet, to go into their bathroom, and stay there for 23 hours.
Right.
Eat their meals there, go to the bathroom there, get a roommate if they can, but if not, stay in that bathroom right there, sleep there, sleep in the tub, come out for an hour in your living room, walk around a little bit, and then go right back into that, bathroom again. And that's what prison is like.
Right.
If you're okay with that, then go ahead and do whatever crimes you want to do.
Yeah,
but if you're not okay with that, then you should probably not do a serious crime.
Right. Yeah, I can't do that.
Right. No one could do that.
Have you taken a moment to put yourself in Young Thug's shoes and think about, his lifestyle might have been a little bit more glamorous than yours, but you basically have, the same amenities. You could eat whatever you want. You can travel wherever you want.
Right.
Wear whatever you want. And then all of a sudden you're just on nothing.
Yeah, the repercussions of doing, some, what they say is some fucked up shit.
Right.
And everyone wants to say free Thug, free YSL, free this, but ultimately, when you read through some of these, reports and there is now people that are cooperating and everything else like that. Ultimately, you could say free this person, free that person, but I think what people really want in the grand scheme of things is for people to be, treated, and tried fairly. You don't want to free, Eric Holder.
Right.
Because Eric Holder is guilty of what he did.
I feel like in the YSL discourse that has happened since the Rico came out, we've seen what, from my perspective, is kind of like a progression of the dialogue that's happening publicly, where maybe in prior years, the whole conversation would have been fuck the cops, free YSL, etc. Now it's like people are getting older, getting a little bit more serious about their life, having to be a little bit more realistic of looking at some of the charges and thinking, well, am I going to look like a fool if I hop on Twitter and say free Young Thug when we know that the stuff that is already out there and the stuff that is going to come out presumably throughout the trial might make you look kind of not so intelligent for having said that, right?
Yeah, I just interviewed
for the record.
I interviewed George Sheedy, the Atlanta journalist who kind of helped break a lot of these stories and so forth. And he's saying how part of the reason why no one has Bond right now was because the YSL guy who shot up Lil Wayne's tour bus is still on the run.
Really?
Yeah, he hasn't been caught.
Wow.
So there's fears of witness intimidation and everything else like that. That's why they're keeping everyone else behind bars. Not the whole reason, but part of the reason.
Interesting.
So since that one guy who's kind of a key part of this whole trial
right.
is running around somewhere, they're trying to keep everyone behind bars because, I mean, they ended up leaking the name of one of the cooperators.
Right. And you said that they're now recanting some of their testimony, or trying.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I saw a Vlad TV title today that made me think that might be the case.
I think someone that I interviewed said that. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
All right.
I'm not sure if that's true, but they actually, one of the guys, and we're not sure exactly how it was done, but George kind of went into this whole thing about how one of the guys probably took a picture of some of the paperwork, a partial part of the paperwork that had a guy's name that was allegedly cooperating, and now that guy is in hiding and under protective custody and so forth.
Right.
But I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, people have died around these. You know, this is not just rappers beating each other up. This is like people are getting killed. People are getting shot.
In some cases, very young boys being killed and stuff.
Yeah.
Like stuff that, if you really want to be intellectually honest with the people that you're speaking to through your social media or whatever, you just should not be endorsing. And that seems like, you know, a positive development, because I feel like there's been times where I've just been seeing a chorus of like free this person on social media and been like, well, that person has really been accused of some horrible stuff here.
Well, because people want they're fans of the music.
Yeah.
Which of these, how many people really are friends with Young Thug and have a personal relationship with him and like, oh, based on my experiences with this man, he's very kind-hearted and very giving and so forth, and I want him freed based on my relationships. Like, no, I like that song. And I want him to make more songs like that. So free him so I could enjoy his music more, or I can enjoy his social media antics more. It's not really about, let's look at the actual case and let's look at what's actually happening. Let's look at the families that are crying over, you know, their son lying dead in the street and so forth, and the war that has been brewing in Atlanta and so forth. It's like, I want Young Thug to do another Drake song, so free him.
Right.
It's really that simple as far as I'm concerned.
One of the sadder things I've seen somebody say in the fallout from the PNB Rock thing is, like, you go back and listen to Every Day We Lit, and you have this song that is so full of excitement and passion and giddiness, and it just sounds so young and just full of energy. And then you look at what happened. One of the guys was murdered, and the other guy, YSL Lucci, was facing a Rico charge. They'll presumably keep him behind bars for a long time.
Yeah. And I interviewed Lucci maybe 4 weeks before he got arrested, and the incident that he got arrested for happened after our interview. So it's not like I'm interviewing him while this thing is pending. It's like we're interviewing and we talked about some of the past bullshit or whatever, and he was just happy, everything else like that. And then I think a shooting occurred afterwards where someone got killed. And then that's when he
where
got,
the dude was being dragged up outside the car and stuff, and his homies left him for dead in the parking lot.
I'm not sure. I don't want to say yes or no, but there was a situation where someone that I think was with Lucci got killed, and he got dragged into that whole situation.
Right. And
he's not given a bond. I mean, he's not given a plea deal, so he's actually going to court.
Right. I mean, would you say that you feel like the level of excitement around hip hop is kind of in a lull right now? And when I say that, I just mean it felt like 2016, 2017, 2018, et cetera, that there was a lot more new artists coming out that people were excited about. Felt like there were more like movements within rap that people were generally excited about. And at this stage, it kind of feels like street music is super popular, but street rappers are in large part getting killed and locked up at a staggering rate, where, a huge percentage of the top artists are like locked up or being killed or whatever. It's like, really, if we were to map it out, it'd be like mind blowing how many artists that are legitimately popular music wise have been killed or locked up. And it just kind of feels like it's hard for anyone to really get a lot of attention in rap right now besides some of the street shit. It feels like the game is kind of like waiting for a shakeup of something new, some kind of new style or new energy. Would you feel like you've noticed any of this?
I mean, I've been listening to hip hop since there was hip hop, so I've seen so many ebbs and flows, and so many incredible years, and so many just kind of blah years, and all it takes is one new artist to pop up out of nowhere and suddenly create that excitement all over again. I mean, look at NBA YoungBoy.
Mm-hmm.
He, the level of excitement and so forth over him, and he's like dropping project after project. He just dropped a new project, I think, like the other day.
Right, and there's like so many artists that you can kind of like link to YoungBoy that probably wouldn't sound like they sound if it wasn't for YoungBoy.
So Ice Spice, she's like the new hot, girl that people are checking for.
You excited about her?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a cool song.
Right.
I think she has a unique look.
Anyone ever called you a munch?
No, never called him much. Okay. Have you?
Yeah, mostly. I declared myself a munch earlier today on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. I haven't been called a munch
For the record, a munch is a man who is useless besides his ability to eat pussy.
Oh, that's what it is?
Essentially, yeah.
Oh.
Like an eater.
But my eating ability has never really been praised to such an extent that I've actually been labeled with the
Me neither, man.
with the title. I mean, I've eaten a lot of pussy over my years, but I don't think I've actually been like a tongue doctor in that regard.
You come from a different age where that wasn't really prized the same way.
Oh, really?
I think now the kids care a little bit more. You never had a tongue ring?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all, man. No. Never considered a tongue ring.
Right.
That literally, like you saying that was like the first time I actually thought of me getting a tongue ring. Like, yo, that's never even been a thought.
Well, I was talking to a girl the other day and I said something. She said something about a guy having a tongue ring and how she didn't think it was that weird. And then I was like, well, what about nipple rings? She's like, oh, hell no. And I'm like, well, a tongue ring's pretty damn close to a nipple ring.
Well, I would say that a tongue ring is like more zesty than a nipple ring. I would say
visually, I don't know.
Who are some
Cisco?
Who's like some artists that have had nipple rings?
We would have to really dig deep. I think it's been a while.
Did Lil Wayne have nipple rings at one point?
Oh, really?
No, I don't think so. Maybe not. I'm not going to put that out there. Damn. But there's been some artists with nipple rings.
Right.
I just can't remember. I think like Luther Vandross had nipple rings, but then he.
There's been a lot of bad fashion eras in rap, There's a lot of rappers who are like permanently emblazoned in tribal tattoos because there was like a 2-year period where everybody was hyped on tribal tattoos.
Tribal tattoos?
Tribal.
Oh, tribal tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember Asian tattoos were the thing? At one point, everyone had like something on their arm that they probably didn't know how.
You're scared of needles, right?
Oh, I have no tats at all. It's not that I'm scared of needles.
Oh, okay.
I've just I'm not a fan of tattoos. I just like even like if you look at like my dating history and the women that I've been with over the years, very few of them have had tattoos. It's just not. I'm just so much into skin and like women's skin and everything else like that. I feel that all a tattoo could do is potentially take away from that beauty.
I feel that.
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
but that's just me.
Imagine
Some
having
people are
all
really
these
into
tattoos from your early 20s. It's like picture like the wall in your room when you were like 16.
And faded.
But just all the shit that you were into, like random artists and like slogans or brands or whatever. And it's like if you got all that stuff tattooed on your skin. Now, I'm lucky that I got like a lot of like traditional tattoos that age well.
Right.
But not all of them. And sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, why do I have that on my skin?
Yeah, like
that's
if
strange.
I had like hyphae on my arm, it wouldn't age too well, right?
Exactly.
Like hyphae on my arm at that point.
Yeah.
And hyphae has a significance to my life because my first documentary was about the hyphae movement, Ghost Ride the Whip. So if I had been a tattoo guy, I'd probably have hyphae, whatever, across my stomach or something like that.
But you having made that documentary or you having been a DJ or whatever, like it's funny that's the same for you as me with the BMX shit, where you have this whole chapter of your life. Now yours is more, it's like hip hop, so it's still like kind of in the same category, but we're successful now, but we have these years, these decade-long things that we did before that don't really matter to the current audience, and you kind of end up having to like explain it over and over, which is it's weird to have your life exist for so long that there are these chapters that nobody even fucking knows about, and you kind of have to just tell them.
Yeah, I was a computer programmer at one point. I had a recruiting agency at one point. I went to college. I went to Berkeley. I was a computer science major. I was in a Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. Like I was in a, you know, role playing games. Like I was into all types of shit that people have no idea about.
Right. If I told you that we're giving away money, would you listen? Well, this week we're doing just that with our partners over at Prize Picks. All first-time users that deposit using the promo code NOJUMPER, one word, will receive an instant deposit match of up to $100. It doesn't matter if you deposit $20, $50, or $100, Prize Picks will instantly match whatever you're starting with. Prize Picks is by far the best legal way to have action on games in states like California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the U.S. If you're curious how it works, all you have to do is select 2 to 5 players on an over-under for their projections, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. If you want, you can bet the over on passing yards for your favorite quarterback or the under on rushing yards for your least favorite running back. With Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And if you already forgot, they're doubling your money. So what are you waiting for? No matter what sport you watch, Prize Picks will have projections on it. Download Prize Picks today and use our promo code NOJUMPER for your instant deposit match of up to $100. Again, that is promo code NOJUMPER for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Now let's get back to the interview. I wanted to ask you about this viral video game tweet. Yeah. Was there anything that happened that made you want to tweet that, or was this just sort of something that floated up in your brain?
It was a combination of some people I was talking to, and talking about experiences of people close to them who would just kind of play video games all day, and would just that's all they would do is play video games. Stories of like girls who would go on vacations with their boyfriends who would take their PS5 with them on the vacation.
That's sad.
Right. And then my own personal experience, like, about a year ago, I was going through some depression, not like a serious, dark, like depression, but I was going through some things in my life. And in order to deal with it, I would just play video games for like 10 hours a day. I would literally get a new game. It was some game I used to play as a kid, The Bard's Tale. Or, I'm like, let me find something that sort of tapped into my childhood in a way. And I used to play video games a lot as a kid. And let me just try to finish this game. And I would spend 10, 12-hour stretches and wake up and play it and so forth. And I remember how depressed I would be feeling not playing, but as soon as I would turn it off, that the problems are still there. Whatever issues I had were right there at my front door. Like, we still here,
right.
You done playing now? Okay, let's come back in and deal with you again. So, and everyone I was talking to was giving me similar kind of reactions and so forth. So I said, let me just go ahead and tweet it out there. I thought maybe we'd get a few retweets or whatever else. Last I checked, it has 23 million impressions.
Right. 12,000 quote tweets or something.
Yeah, 14,000 responses.
Right.
Kevin Durant responded. Ocho Cinco responded. This guy that was like a champion at Mario Smash Brothers, Mew to Kill or something, who was like a Forbes 30 under 30 dude, responded, and we went back and forth a little bit, and all types of people were responding, and a lot of people were getting angry at me because I think I triggered a lot of real things, right? It wouldn't have gotten that big if I had said that like video games cause impotency, right? I think people just look at that and laugh and just say, okay,
right,
that has nothing to do with that. But I think what I said in terms of depression, and it was focused on adults.
Right.
If you're a kid that plays video games all day, whatever, we all did that. But if you're an adult, nothing will make time go faster than a video game.
I think it's interesting that was on your mind at this time, because I had just done an interview like a week or two earlier with this guy named Destiny, who's he streams on YouTube. He's like a political commentator and everything. He's really popular, but he also plays video games, and he plays video games on stream while he talks to people and everything. And I brought that up, basically saying, what has your relationship with video games been like throughout your life? Because I've seen in myself that sometimes I can have these really amazing experiences with video games, either through like, just drilling some game and just trying to get really, really good at it, which I've had through Tetris, or with a game like Final Fantasy VII or Zelda. I'm playing this game and it's truly like got this narrative that I'm really, really involved in, and I would compare it to like watching, Game of Thrones, where it's like,
well, but it's a little bit different, right? Because I mean, I finished the Zelda game on on the Nintendo Switch.
Right,
I thought it was a very dope game. Yeah, it's an amazing game, and I played it. I spent a lot of time on it. So when I'm not talking out my ass, I'm not the grumpy old man who's like, oh, these kids today with your video games. Like, nah, it's like I actually play these games, and the thing of it is that unlike a movie, because people say, well, what about people who binge watch on Netflix? What about people who read books, people who play chess? These are all just hobbies. It's the same thing. Well, for example, you look at, if you binge watch a show on Netflix, at least for me, a lot of times I'm multitasking. I'll be on my laptop. I'll be checking YouTube numbers. I'll be returning emails. I might take a phone call. I might pause it. I might go back and rewatch it one or two more times. Even a show I really like House of Dragon or Lord of the Rings or Better Call Saul or whatever. A video game requires your total undivided attention. You can't multitask a video game.
Sometimes I play video games. I play Pokemon Go while listening to podcasts, and I play poker while listening to podcasts. So a lot of times I'm multitasking those things.
Okay, I've never been able to pull that off.
Okay. And a lot of games you wouldn't be able to because there's audio that's important.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You can't really, I mean, I guess maybe with Zelda if you're just trying to destroy a bunch of stuff, but if there's a storyline and so forth, usually you're fully engrossed in that game. Plus the games they're really designed just kind of like how social media is designed to really suck you in, to really keep you going and playing for hours, as well as like the micro payments that are designed for you to keep spending money so you'll get to a level that's hard to get to and so forth. So, and look, it's a business. The people who are making it, they want that. They're trying, video games, I believe, are the most profitable form of entertainment. I believe Grand Theft Auto made more money than any music or movie project in the history of the world.
Wow.
Because it's a higher price point, right? It's like $60.
Right.
Plus all the extra shit. So there's a financial incentive to set this up.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, because people are like, oh, well, it's just art, just like anything else. It's like, well, a painter creates a painting. A gamer creates nothing. They're just spending their time playing a video game with ultimately nothing to show for it. And I made the distinction to say, if you're turning it into a business, if you're like an esports guy, or if you're PewDiePie or these guys that are making a lot of money by streaming, that's a whole different conversation because there's a purpose behind what you're doing. Right. You're doing this to ultimately to make money and to support yourself. But if you have a 9-to-5 job, you come home. One guy said in the comments, he said, I play games for 6 hours a day and I don't see anything wrong with that. And it's like, well, if there's 24 hours in a day, 6 of those hours are spent sleeping, right? You have 18 hours left. 6 of those hours are spent games. You're spending a third of your life playing games.
I would just like to hear somebody like that articulate exactly what they think that they are getting out of those 6 hours a day, because
some
people do get a real sense of community. Yeah. You're playing these games online with other people and you're able to talk to them and stuff. I could see there being a lot that you could get from video games. I just think that in reality, for a lot of people, like a lot of people I know play Fortnite, they're going to sit on the computer for 8 hours and they're going to compete in this game that does not have like an overall overarching narrative.
Prize or anything.
There's. I mean, I guess if you were to become truly elite, you could make money or whatever. But for the most part, you're just repeating this scenario over and over and over, trying to get better at it.
Yeah.
And I get why it's fun, but I think at a certain point, if you're honest with yourself, like when I was saying, having that conversation with Destiny, that he said there's been times where he's been completely engrossed in games and having a really positive experience, and there's been times where it's basically just been a function of his depression or his, where you're trying to avoid something that you have to do. And you could very much achieve both, I think, through video games. And I think a lot of people aren't really self-aware about the fact that they're maybe not getting something great out of it.
Yeah, man, and there's always a justification. One guy was saying, because I made a comment about taking the video game on vacation with your girlfriend. One dude's like, "Yeah, this is ridiculous. No woman would stand for this." And the response was, "Oh, you let women run your life, huh?" And she's like, "There's no talking someone out of this. Once their mind is set that this is what they do and they justify it, you're messing with their self-image. And yeah, I mean, that was the biggest tweet I've ever made, I think,
Right.
in life. And I've been on Twitter probably for like 15 years. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And the other thing about it too, though, like I like working out, but I'm not going to work out more than like an hour or two a day because there's a natural limit on what my body can do.
Yeah.
With a video game, you can sit there for 12 hours and play it, and there's nothing that's going to stop you. It's really like the path of least resistance.
Right. It's always there to play with you. It's always there to make you happy. It's always there to give you some level of achievement.
And it's been designed to be that way.
It's designed that way. It's not like
Mario Brothers was bad at it, and these new games are
Yeah.
great at it.
Right. And, you know, one of the guys, we were going back and forth a little bit, and I'm like, he's like, yo, some of my greatest experiences were with video games when I was younger. And I'm like, you probably would have had better experiences with a girl.
Yeah.
Because when I look at, I mean, to me, it's sort of just obvious. Like, when I say my top 100, I think that's what triggered people is the top 100 experiences. Because people are like, no, some of my top experiences were with video games. If I look at my top 100 experiences, if I just look at my experiences with women alone, video games are already out of the out of that list.
All right.
Like I've never had a video game experience that's been more impactful than an experience with a woman.
Right.
Right? Various women throughout my life. Like, I just can't compare those two.
Yeah.
But some people can. But maybe some people haven't really had a lot of experiences with women and so forth, so they don't have the same
Well, we grew
one-to-one.
We grew up in a way where we had the early years in our life where we weren't online, and then at some point the internet comes around
Right.
and we sort of slowly get into it because in the beginning it maybe wasn't all that interesting, and then you slowly see it becoming more and more involved, and you have more and more stuff you can do online to the point now where realistically I could probably wake up and spend 16 hours online every day watching YouTube videos, reading Twitter, watching people's Twitch streams, etc.
Right.
And sometimes that scares me a little bit when I look at these Twitch streamers who have a couple 100,000 people watching them live all fucking day. And it's just, that's a lot of people who are really just in the house watching some shit and you know, sort of living this like fake friendship by pretending that they're friends with Pokimane or whatever. Who, I don't know if you know, that's a popular Twitch streamer.
I don't know what that is.
Right. But I mean, when I look at that and I think about all of the stuff that I had to go through in my life in terms of just being around people and developing the social intelligence and learning how to talk to a girl in a bar from scratch without any kind of lead into it or whatever, and then you think about some of the stuff you see about kids these days where they're having a lot less sex, which might sound like a good thing, kids not having sex,
I
whatever,
don't know
but like
about that.
the percentage of like not even like high school age kids, but like 18, early 20-year-old kids, they're like really having less sex and they're interacting with each other a lot less. And I personally think this stuff is all looped in with why we have problems with school shooters and incels and people who are just like isolated and they get weird and they think that maybe life is a fucking video game. And if I walk into this mosque and I shoot 40 people, that's going to be somehow virtuous, because I think they kind of, it's easy. If you want to get led in that direction online, you could find the forums that are going to tell you that life is a video game where you need to kill people.
Well, I mean, someone told me, I don't know if it's totally true, but someone told me that essentially every school shooter is a hardcore gamer.
I would be interested to fact check that, but I also could think a pretty significant percentage of them off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah. The Trenchcoat Mafia, guys like that, those are hardcore gamers. And they're living their life with this type of interaction. Not a whole lot of human interaction. I mean, listen, it's a lot harder to meet a girl, go on a date, go through the initial awkwardness, the first kiss,
The rejection
leading
up to the date.
Yeah, you know, leading up to that, you know, because the guy, this Mewtwo Kill guy, when we were going back and forth a little bit, it started out relatively friendly. Because he was saying, yo, a lot of my great experiences were during this time, you know, and I disagree about this whole depression thing. And I'm like, well, I just looked at your profile. You have Asperger's, you know, you have OCD, which I have as well, so I can relate to that, and you've been suicidal, it's all documented on his Wikipedia page. And then it was like, oh, how dare you talk about my past? I try to forget it. Like, you know, you have no right to talk about this. And I'm like, you entered a chat with me. Like, I didn't know who you were. You entered a chat with me to talk about depression.
Right.
Suicide is the ultimate form of depression, to the point where you don't even want to be on this planet anymore. So you being suicidal and saying that video games have nothing to do with my depression is not a realistic conversation. If you're going to enter a chat with me, like, you don't know who I am. Like, this is what I do for a living. Like, I get into people's backgrounds and I analyze people and we have conversations about serious topics. So I don't think we knew who each other were before this happened. And then he got all triggered and was like, oh, fuck you. And it's like, whatever.
But I mean, that profile of a person that you just described kind of sounds like the sort of person who, in years prior, where there wasn't this ability to just connect with a like-minded community of people on Discord and Twitch and whatever, that he's the kind of person who maybe would have had a hard time fitting into like normal social situations. And he might have, if he hadn't had any other option, he might have been like the weird ass kid in a frat or in college or whatever, who just like had bad social skills and was not able to really like flourish in the real world. So then to him, the internet is this safe space where all the things that he's bad at, and I'm making a lot of assumptions about this guy, I don't even remember who you're talking about, but maybe a lot of social interactions hard for him. So then the internet seems amazing. Whereas for somebody like me or you who, you know, is maybe more normal or maybe able to handle these situations better, the internet seems like a giant waste of potential. Whereas for some of these people, I think it seems like a great way for them to avoid all the things that they're just never going to be good at.
Yeah, like I said, for me, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is, there is an overbearing reason of what I do it, and it's really around my business. It's really about building revenue, building the company up, getting more employees, increasing the quality of my content, and social media is a part of all this. So if you're a hardcore gamer and you make $200,000 a year and you're on gaming all day, yo, I salute you. Like, okay, dope. You're getting better at something that you're getting paid for. But if you're doing it strictly for recreation and you're using a third of your life on that, it's not the same. It's you're losing a lot. Because the funny part is that publicly everyone was bashing me, but I was getting hundreds of DMs of like, bro, like, you're talking about me right now. I've wasted tons, just years and years of my life. I didn't go to college. I was 300 pounds. I isolated myself. I didn't have real relationships. You know, I was always depressed and then playing video games. Like, literally hundreds and hundreds of DMs of people like, yo, like, fuck what everyone else is saying. Like, you're inspiring me to put my game down and really get back into the real world and get into life. And for me, that's why the people I did it for. I don't give a shit. Like, people think that somehow bashing me online somehow shames me or whatever else. Like, fuck all that. I got the biggest tweet I ever had, and I affected a whole bunch of people in a positive manner. And if you want to be in denial or whatever, or if this doesn't apply to you, cool. Doesn't matter to me. Like,
the weird thing about it was that you were finally getting attacked outside of your usual bubble.
Right.
Because we're used to seeing Vlad get attacked within hip hop, but now
Nicki
you have
Minaj
a different
fans,
community
whatever,
coming for you. Yeah.
And let me tell you, like, man, it's like, I feel like all the adult male virgins from around the world all turned on me all at once and attacked me and said, how dare you say that making love to a woman is better than playing Call of Duty? Don't tell us what to do.
It just feels like dishonest sometimes, because I feel like, you know, it's like the porn thing. People always want to be like, oh, porn is ruining society. And me, as a person who's invested in porn, I instinctively am like, that's ridiculous. Of course not. But I need to also be open to evidence that would suggest that there are negative things coming from the proliferation of porn in society in order for me to be honest with the world, right? And so, like, that thing you said about the video games and the school shooters, a lot of gamers are going to reflexively be horrified that you would draw that connection. I think you need to be open-minded about it. I think, you know, because it's not that hard for me to draw the line from like, oh, you grew up shooting guns at things in a video game, and then you get older, and some percentage of those people choose to take guns and shoot at people in real life. Right. I mean, I don't find that to be that, and I support games, and I play tons of games that involve shooting people. Not to mention, I listen to music where people are talking about shooting people. But I think if you're a real intellectually honest person, you have to take that idea serious.
Right, and you know, porn addiction is a real thing.
Right.
Video game addiction is a real thing.
They're both things that you could have a healthy relationship with.
Social media addiction is a real thing.
Yeah.
depression ties into these things, especially if your life is not where it needs to be. You know, like if you're sitting there making minimum wage and all your spare time is spent watching porn and you don't have a girlfriend or a wife, it's going to be depressing after a while.
Yeah.
If you look at yourself honestly, you're going to be like, I'm fucking up.
Right.
You know? If you're a multimillionaire and you like to watch a porn movie every so often, or you like to watch porn when you're with your actual sexual partner, you may not see that as a big deal. You know, if you smoke weed all day and you're a billionaire, who cares? If you smoke weed, if you smoke weed all day and you're barely scraping by, it is a big deal.
But because, all right, this is the overarching thing, is that a lot of ideas get promoted in our culture that are good for wealthy people and bad for poor people, but they get promoted by wealthy people as if they're good for everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you an example is like the sexual revolution. You know, women sleeping with a lot of guys and not being in a serious relationship, whatever. Like when you're a millionaire, and if you're a woman, yeah, you can do that. You can sleep with whoever the fuck you want. You can not be in a relationship, and that's just fine. You're gonna fall into a position that's gonna be totally fine for you, and you'll probably be able to get in a relationship once you want to, etc. But for a poor woman to not to be sleeping with a bunch of guys and potentially have a baby out of wedlock, to not ever get married and find herself at 40 where she like is basically unmarriable. All these things are terrible outcomes for a poor person. But we live in a society. Kylie Jenner buying a bunch of designer is an absolutely fine decision for her. Vlad buying this shirt is a fine decision for him. A person watching this, if you go to the store and you buy a bunch of designer, you've probably just torpedoed your financial future for the significant future, right? I mean,
yeah, possibly.
It's true.
Possibly,
it's just, these ideas get passed off as good for everybody when a lot of times they're only good for the elites.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Cannon being on baby number 9 with, I think, multiple more kids on the way.
He can afford it.
He can afford it.
You can't. Guy watching this, I can't.
Yeah. But certain things are not good, period. So you could afford it. So, yeah, the kids have money, but how much time are you spending with each kid? You got 9 kids with like 8 different baby mothers.
I saw you and Ak having that conversation.
What's that?
I saw you and Ak having that conversation the other day, and he was saying like a lot of people who are truly successful kind of like blow off the family thing because they're so focused. They put fame and success above everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't admire that, but then again, I'm friends with Boosie, who has a bunch of kids also, but he also kind of spread his kids around. It's not like he had like 8 kids in 3 years.
Right.
Where multiple women are pregnant at the same time and everything else like that. And he has gone out of his way to really embrace all of his children and have all of his kids' mothers live next to him. They're always at his house. He built a house in a fashion where all his kids are there all the time and have their own bedrooms and so forth. Like, I wouldn't aspire to have a bunch of baby mothers that I could see my kid once every 2 weeks and then have to rotate to another kid. And because, Nick is also juggling a full career.
Right.
Between Wild and Out and The Masked Singer and his radio shit and whatever else. It's like, I don't know. I personally see it as creating a bunch of broken families and not really dealing with the reality of that.
It's hard for me to understand how he would want to live that way, but I'm also on baby number 1. So I kind of feel like, how am I to judge how somebody might want to leave their mark on the world? Yeah. Okay. I recently had a heated exchange on the Joe Budden podcast where we discussed a couple of different topics. I'm going to start with one that really was kind of a referendum on some Vlad tactics that I've picked up over the years, which is re-uploading clips of someone after they passed away.
Right.
They did everything they could to try to villainize this practice.
Right.
It didn't feel like the audience was terribly convinced. You were brought up because I said you were the first person that I had ever seen do this, and how it eventually, after seeing you do it, it made me realize that I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I got a lot of pushback on that. How do you see that?
I'm going to show you, because I was thinking about this today, and I knew that this question would come up. So when I was in my car, I took a screenshot of my Spotify display in my car, and Rap Caviar, who is like one of my go-to, one of the big playlists on Spotify.
I stop by there whenever I want to know what's going on.
The number 1 song that just got added to Rap caviar.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Go ahead, take a look at that.
Number one is PNB Rock, selfish. Not terribly surprised though.
So Spotify is I'm waiting for the Joe Budden comment about Spotify, how they're monetizing a black man's death,
right,
on a platform that is a subscription-based platform.
Right. I mean, the response immediately would be his family's earning money off of that, while when a clip of him doing an interview, if it were to get re-uploaded on No Jumper, that his family's not seeing anything from that. My argument would be that it's really not about that. It's really just about sharing this person at a time that people are looking for information about them.
It's just obvious. Like when Olivia Newton-John died, when I go into Paramount Plus, Grease was the first movie on there because everyone's looking back at her catalog and so forth. The funny part to me about Joe, who I feel has been a hypocrite this whole time, is that when he first mentioned the whole thing about me uploading Kevin Samuel's life story flashback after he passed, was like, oh yeah, Vlad's whatever for doing that. Oh, you know, I didn't do that, you know, with my Kevin Samuel's interview that got 6 million views, by the way. And I'm just like shaking my head like, did you take off the advertising off your Kevin Samuel's interview, Joe Budden, as you're bragging about the number of views?
But the re-upload is the thing that people get so concerned about, right?
Whatever. It's all just gaslighting, and it's all just like, Joe don't like me, so he's going to come up with something to try to ridicule something that actually we feel is a something that really celebrates the person who I got to sit down with for a couple of hours, that everyone is checking for and so forth. You know, Joe didn't demonetize that. He probably made $10,000, $20,000 off of that Kevin Samuels, as he's making money off a dead man. You know, the thing that he's accusing other people of doing. Joe should take down every interview of everyone he's interviewed that's passed away. Right. As time goes on, more and more interviews will be like that. But he doesn't do that. He likes to essentially attack things that, by using like a racial bias and so forth. Like, and that's what he does. That's what 50 did to Ja Rule. He made fun of Ja Rule singing. And made Ja Rule rethink his whole strategy and start doing songs like Clapback and so forth. And then Ja Rule's career ended up going down because what people were checking for was the singing. But then 50 Cent started doing himself. Right. And when you fall for that bullshit, when you fall for someone trying to take you off your game by trying to ridicule something that's working for you already, we do not make a huge percentage of our income from flashbacks. Maybe 2-3% overall. It's really more designed to really celebrate the person. And a lot of times my interviews are life stories. So Joe Budden doesn't have a life story interview with Kevin Samuels. He has Kevin Samuels talking about a bunch of topics. I have the only interview with Kevin Samuels that starts with his birth and goes through his childhood, goes through his parents, goes through his various marriages, his ups and downs and so forth, and ends with his philosophies and everything else like that. Joe doesn't have that. So why would I not put up the life story, essentially the documentary of this man that everyone's talking about right now that had such a significant effect, both positive and negative to certain people?
And this is the thing.
It's just stupid.
When you interview somebody, especially early in their career, or especially where you feel like you kind of have the definitive blueprint of who they were as a person, it is an amazing feeling to have that under your company, right? Like my main memory of that is the interview with X that just, didn't really have a lot of other interviews. It became, in his passing, the definitive blueprint of who he was as a person at a time where millions and millions of people were trying to figure out who he was as a person. And the idea that your media company would be wrong to re-upload that clip on YouTube just because of the fact that you're going to earn some money off of it, like, of course your media company would want to celebrate the fact that you got this unbelievable piece of content. And I feel like he is kind of like being a little bit, he's playing dumb to a certain extent because he knows how important it is. He's a content creator. He gets it. Every single time a rapper dies, and I got this from his Reddit, so I know that they believe it fully. But every time somebody dies, there's a clip on the Joe Budden podcast of him talking about it. And
Remember
it's like, what's the difference between him talking about it and just re-uploading a clip of an interview?
It's all gaslighting. He said, Vlad and Adam are the only ones who re-upload shit when someone dies. Academics just re-uploaded PNB Rock's interview.
Well, he actually uploaded for the first time. That clip hadn't been up on his YouTube yet.
Okay.
But
he uploaded it exactly when it happened.
And in PNB Rock's passing, one of the more viral tweets was somebody on Twitter who basically just said that Academics was a piece of shit for uploading that clip like an hour after he died, which, I mean, realistically, that's a special case because he had already done that interview and that clip was probably going to come out anyway. If not that day, it was going to come out in general. So it's kind of like he had just done the interview. Like, can he at least drop the fucking clip?
I think Joe just... with Joe, it's a way of saying I hate white people in hip hop without saying I hate white people in hip hop. Like I've never heard of a white person that Joe has had any level of respect for whatsoever between me, you, Rory. He lied about Complex president Rich Antoinello, said he heard him say the N-word, which is fucking ridiculous. Like I've known Rich for like 15 years and I've never seen any inkling of racism in any of our conversations.
He's really picking out fights because he had Academics on and he didn't give him any of that War in Chirac talk. And then for some reason I'm there and I have to answer to the War in Chirac.
But on the same note, Joe Budden wants to do an interview with me. He wants to sit down with me and do an interview.
He wants to interview you.
No, he wants us to do an interview together on, he mentioned that on Academics podcast. Academics like, Joe wants to, he wants to know if the two of y'all finally sit down on my platform.
And you're not interested.
I'm not interested, man. I'm not interested. He'll have to find someone else to save his show. It's not going to be us. And you can say what you want, but we've consistently gotten more views than Joe overall since Joe has started. You could say what you want to say. We've consistently done better than him business-wise. YouTube channel has always been bigger. Audience has always been bigger. His sparks these days come from shit like what he did with you. I mean, even Rory. I feel like Rory and Mal have actually surpassed Joe Budden in terms of cultural significance.
You think?
I think so. I see their stuff becoming more viral, and their moments and something so much more so than I see him with the other two guys that he has on the show. And so forth. And, that's just me from the outside looking in. It's not like I'm cool with Rory or Mal or whatever. I don't know those guys.
Right.
So I'm just saying from the outside looking in.
When Joe says he's the #1 hip hop personality,
I mean, that's his opinion.
You don't think so?
We all should
Who's
feel that
#1?
way.
Because I don't even really think of myself like that. So it was kind of interesting to hear him say that because I don't spend any mental energy thinking about like where exactly I fit in, who's the most interesting person to hear talk about rap.
I think there's no such thing as the #1 anymore. Everyone has their own platform. I mean, if you want to count numbers, Vlad TV is the biggest YouTube channel in the hip hop space. We don't just do hip hop. We kind of, we there's gangster shit and there's sports shit and
But at a certain point, any platform has got to expand beyond where they just started, right? Like look at Barstool. Yeah. Do you think Barstool thought that they were going to have one of the #1 hip hop podcasts?
Yeah, $1 million with the game.
10 years ago, I don't think that would have ever crossed their mind. Not to mention the Call Her Daddy thing that's two white girls talking about their sex lives and shit like that.
Right,
I mean, that started out as a purely sports platform, and then they just sort of like organically transformed into something much bigger.
I feel like everyone has their moments. Like if you're really on your grind, like everyone has their moments. Gilly has his moments. I have my moments. You have your moments. Academics has his moments. And so forth. Like, and even Joe had his moment when he interviewed Isaiah Rashad. Like that was a moment of Isaiah's first interview about the whole gay thing. Like people have their moments. Can you keep it up? Every interview you put out is not going to be hot to death. Just isn't. You're going to have your ebbs and your flows. Like my Keefe D interview was epic. The new shit I got with Warren Sapp interviewing Michael Irvin this comes out. It's like it's going to be epic.
How do you engineer something like that though?
What do you mean?
I mean, you have somebody who's never done an interview on your platform interviewing somebody else. Like, how does that happen instead of like the idea being like, I'm going to sit down and interview you? Like, how did you come up with that specific one?
Well, with everyone, because think about it, we have a lot of outside interviewers now.
Right.
Between Sean Prez, Shirley Jew, Lunel, Coach PR, with podcasts like Rico Reckless, Ari Spears did a podcast for us. This was just another idea, another sort of spin-off business and so forth. What I like to do is I want the person to do them, but I also understand what the audience is going to react to. So usually we lay out a blueprint. Like I usually will produce whatever that person is doing. So I'll sit down with them. I'll lay out the notes, and I'll sit down with them and go over the notes ahead of time, and then it's up to them what happens real time. They don't want to ask certain questions, they don't have to ask certain questions. There was a bunch of shit that I had, that I gave Warren to ask Michael, and he was like, afterwards, he didn't ask probably 80% of the questions because he was like, a lot of these Michael would have walked out on.
Right.
I know him. He's like a lifelong friend. They're like friends.
Right.
So he knows better than I am, but I'm still going to bring it up and pitch it, and so forth. So that's kind of the whole thing of a combination of here's what I think will work, but we want you to do you as well, and we don't want you to ask something that is not comfortable between you and that person. A lot of times, like, Sean Prez is great because he spent so many years a bad boy. So, like, his interview with Lil C's was probably going to be better than if I did the interview with Lil C's. One of the interviews that really was impactful on our channel this year was Tavis Smiley, right, which was the big news guy that was on BET and PBS and so forth. Like, Sean had a bigger connection to Tavis than I did. Right. I know about Tavis, and I've watched a few of his things, but Sean more like kind of was more in tune with who Tavis was as a person and the impact that he had, in terms of black journalism and so forth. So by him doing that interview, I've heard like, yo, this is my favorite interview on Vlad TV ever. Wow. Like me and Tavis talked the other day for the first time, actually, and he goes, I've never had so many people hit me about an interview I did, from politicians to athletes to actors to musicians. Like, it was really like, he's like, I wasn't expecting that. And I don't know if I would have had that same reaction if I did the interview. So I try to fit people where they're the most impactful.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
But does it sometimes feel like it's like not worth the effort because you could always kind of just do the interview yourself, and that it takes more time for you to sort of coach somebody on how to do the best interview, and it's a weird feeling because it's like at a certain point, if somebody gets good enough at doing interviews, are they just going to do their own thing, and all of a sudden you lose them?
No, because when it comes to outside interviewers, number one, none of them are full-time employees. None of them have long-term contracts. I've always been, even with the podcast that we do, it's like a lot of people want to come in, I want to do 10 podcast deal. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to
one by one,
do it one piece at a time. At any point that you feel that you want to go somewhere else, even with the name, whatever the podcast is called, be my guest. At any point we feel that these podcasts aren't really going anywhere, these interviews you're doing aren't really reacting, we have the right to not book anymore from you. We feel that we bring a lot to the table by being under the Vlad TV platform and the umbrella. We have 5.2 million subscribers, and we also have a way of pushing stuff out. We have relationships. Like, I could hit up the Shade Room, I could hit up World Star, I could hit up Academics, I could hit you up and say, hey, listen. And I've done that from time to time. I think this is important. Can you post this for me and help it, give it a little bit of a push? We have that under our umbrella, so there is an inherent value of being on Vlad TV as opposed to, like, when I signed the iHeart deal and we started putting our stuff on Spotify, we realized that there was no support there. It was like, okay, it's a brand new platform. The advertising isn't, that Spotify, that the iHeart is providing isn't really moving the needle very much. We kind of have to start from scratch, from one subscriber and work our way up. This is a bit of a jump start. You could skip the line and suddenly have a audience already built in, and actually have your stuff react. So it's not just a paycheck. It's like, like this stuff is really going to get millions of views. Like, because Shirley has her own YouTube channel.
She does her own interviews as well.
Shirley's Temple. But she doesn't do the numbers that we do that she does on Vlad TV,
Right.
even when she gets bigger artists on Shirley's Temple, because there's not that
audience
yeah.
waiting there for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, it becomes. Oh, I'm gonna have to cut for 1 second. What the fuck was I gonna say? Are you talking about the interviews? And then you said,
Getting old, man.
I know I'm getting old. Getting lost in a fog here. Oh, all right. You said at one point that you want to be dropping 100
Yeah.
different clips a day
A day.
on one YouTube channel, or
Yeah,
could you
we're-
imagine it being more than one channel by that point?
No, I don't want to do multiple channels.
Okay.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you get to 100? And what you're at, like 10-ish now?
11 now.
11?
11 plus 2 flashbacks and occasional full interviews. So sometimes that number is about 14. Yeah.
There's a small part of me that's like, I don't know if I could handle 100 clips a day in my sub box.
I mean, when me and Leo Cohen talked,
Right.
who's the head of YouTube music globally, I asked him, he's like, yo, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. Because, you got to understand that in 2008 when I dropped, and I'm like, yo, I'm going to drop a new clip every day, everyone told me that was crazy. That's just too much. People don't want to watch a new clip every day. Just drop the full interview and then whatever, a week later, drop another interview. Like everyone thought that was stupid.
Right.
Fast forward 2022, no one thinks it's stupid anymore.
Right.
A lot of stuff that we did, people didn't understand in the beginning, but the numbers have proven it.
Because you're one of the only people in this space who, if you really think about it, the vast majority of people in this space are trying to make money off of brand deals and sponsorships.
I don't give a shit.
And you have carved out your own lane where you're able to make a shitload of money off of AdSense, which to a lot of podcasts, the AdSense, and actually I'm in the same boat because we make a significant percentage of our income from AdSense, but a lot of podcasts, like $1 million worth of game, they'll play a fucking System of a Down song in the beginning so that there's no chance they're making any AdSense, but they have so much advertising on the episode that that's how they monetize. And it's interesting with yours, though, because, I mean, you told me that one Boosie interview got you 20 million YouTube views.
I think it's more. 22 million.
And, I mean, and then you drop another fucking Boosie interview the next day. That is astonishing. I'm not going to even try to do the math, but that is a fuckload of money off of one piece of content, and you didn't have to do a better help ad in the middle of it.
I mean, a lot of stuff that what I learned a long time ago is that, remember Steve Rifkin told me this, and it sort of stuck with me. He said, when he first launched Loud used to be a street team company that would basically, if a label was dropping a new artist, they would canvas, put shit all over it, and they have teams in different cities, all the cool kids. They would have little listening parties. They would put
Go check out my Steve
up.
Rifkin interview.
Yeah.
Sure, you got one too, probably, right?
Oh, yeah, I've got a few. And he was making a shitload of money, and his dad, that was like a gangster and also an OG in the music industry, was like, him and his uncle, another gangster, sat him down, was like, here's the difference between an asset business and a service business. What you're doing right now is being in a service business. When you get into the asset business, it becomes a totally different ball game. So for me, I'm in the asset business. Everything I do, I create it, and I hope to make revenue for it, with it forever. May not be a lot of revenue, but it might be a few pennies here and there. And if events happen around that video, the views spike up, and
you
so
produce
forth.
so much content that you're really exposed to those whims. Where,
Exactly.
if someone dies, there's a pretty good chance there's a bunch of Vlad TV clips that you talked about that topic, or you could re-up that topic, or you interviewed that person, et cetera,
Right. Not that we
Not that you're
hope
hoping
that
it.
happens.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't. But, just something like, I don't know. What's like a recent event? Like if Fat Joe was suddenly trending about something, we have old Fat Joe interviews.
Right.
He probably said something similar in these old interviews. But if you're taking like brand deals and so forth, I've never heard of these guys continuously paying you forever as you get views.
It's
you get,
upfront.
It's an upfront check that becomes part of that content forever.
Some of my best old interviews have like a weed ad in the beginning because I got like a half a pound of weed from some company. And for all of time, 30 years from now, that ad will still be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get that one check, service business, right? You're doing a service for this company by inserting their content, their ad within your content forever. They pay you a check once. They get to benefit for that forever. And it also degrades the actual content, right? People could argue that all they want, but the reality is that someone's sitting down where they prefer to watch it from start to finish with the artist in front of their screen, or with 30 minutes in watching a weed read or weed commercial
Not even
or
30
whatever
minutes
else.
in, just the first like minute.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It takes away from the content.
Right.
I feel.
Yeah.
So for me, the short-term money of whatever that is takes away from the long-term idea of what I'm building. So I just chose never to really take that type of money. And it's not like we get a bunch of offers because we don't really try to pursue that.
Right.
You know, you almost need a sales team to do this type of shit and so forth. So,
but the way that you've constructed your business is such that it's basically intended to get as many views as possible from the clips, to make money from the memberships because people want to see the interviews in advance. They can do that.
Yeah.
And then the full interview is the least prioritized thing because that drops last. And a lot of times it'll still end up getting a lot of views, but usually usually the clips have more views, which is kind of like, and that's why I know that I still, like, as much as I don't really like brand deals, we need to do as many as we can because ours has always been focused around, we're going to drop this long thing first. Now we're a lot more serious about dropping the clips, but for us it kind of makes a lot more sense to try to really monetize the shit out of that full length piece of content. Yeah.
Different type of business, man. I mean, you've done well with it.
Right.
You know, bravo to your success. It's
Appreciate
just
it.
that I had a different view of it.
Right. But you also have an interview style that is very much geared towards the clips. Like, how conscious of that are you? Because people don't know necessarily that when you're getting interviewed by Vlad, sometimes you can very much kind of tell what the clips are going to be as it goes because you don't do a lot of bullshit small talk in between the clips. It's kind of about the topic.
Topic to topic.
Right.
Yeah, very conscious. I mean, it's laid out in my notes. Like, I just feel like most times we out-research everybody. Most times. That's no shot to you or to anyone else to do it. I just feel like, and there's never enough research. There's always like, I should have spent an extra couple hours. I should have spent another week. I should have whatever. I sometimes find out something after the fact. But to the best of our ability, we really research and really get into a lot of things by watching other interviews, by reading articles. And a lot of times, I mean, look, man, I'm 49 years old. My memory banks are filled with a lot of shit.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I remember, like, for example, I interviewed Tony Yayo the other day. Again, he's a regular guest now. It's our third interview. So obviously there's going to be a lot of 50 Cent related questions with Tony because that's 50 Cent's man, right? And 50 and Lil Kim are going back and forth recently. I don't know if you caught that. But I guess Kim did a song, and some people thought she was taking a shot at Nicki Minaj's kid.
Right.
Which she claimed she wasn't. So 50 Cent made a comment about like, oh shit, look, Kim, Nicki, Kim talking about your kid, look at Kim's kid, and like, he made like this emoji with like one eye is bigger than the other, and Kim's daughter, I believe, has an eye condition.
Oh wow.
That he was sort of mocking.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, I'm not cool with that, but
damn,
50 gonna be 50, and then
you gotta leave the kids out of it.
She responded, oh yeah, no, don't talk about my kids, blah 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 blah. So me being who I am and my history in hip hop, I was like, I remember how this beef started. It's not going to be in a Wikipedia page.
Magic Stick. No?
Right.
Magic Stick, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm glad I remember
it started with Magic Stick. And there was
he did the song, and didn't he want to have his own artist on it, and she ended up somehow getting on it?
No.
That's why one of the biggest rap songs of all time that has not had a video.
Well,
I believe
there's a story behind that.
Oh,
there's a story behind
Fill us
that.
in, Vlad.
right? Yeah, I think Trina did a verse on it, but it didn't really work. But that's not what it's about.
Okay.
Lil Kim, I mean, that was a Lil Kim song featuring 50 Cent.
Oh.
Right? Hold on. I'm gonna actually pull out my notes just so I could.
At first, it started that way, and then it became a 50 featuring Lil Kim song. You could put a Vlad flashback noise right there.
Wait, hold on.
How about the fact that like 10 times a day I have to hear that intro thing?
All right, so hold on a second. Oh, do I not have this? Okay, I can't find my notes, but okay, this is what happened. So Kim, so there was this song called Magic Stick. 50, it was a Lil Kim song featuring 50 Cent. The song became a big song, and this was when 50 was on fire. This was when Get Rich or Die Trying was out.
He was like the only rapper.
He was like the only rapper in the world, right? So the song was huge. It was one of Kim's biggest songs in quite a while. 50 didn't want to do the music video.
Oh, okay.
G Unit went on Funk Flex and did a freestyle. And 50 just went in. And it was like, this is why I tried to look up the lyrics to it, but it was like, basically, the lyrics were something like, I gave Kim a hit, I wouldn't do the video and shit. And, she caught an attitude, got in her feelings. Why would I care about her feelings? She's not my bitch. To the point where Flex had to stop the freestyle. Because they're like, Lloyd Banks, wait. Flex had to stop the freestyle. Like, yo, 50, like, wow. We got to chill out. And I think something may have even happened after that situation. But I mean, like.
It's like a shooting or something?
Possibly.
Something?
Possibly. When I brought it up to Tony Yayo, he kept trying to switch the subject. He kept switching, like Yayo is the fucking master of not answering a question he don't want to answer. He will talk over you. He'll switch the subject. You'll try to bring it back. He won't let you bring it back and so forth. But like, this is just from my own memory banks. This is for me actually hearing that freestyle on the radio, living in New York at the time, listening to Funk Flex on the radio. So a lot of it goes into like, I'm older than a lot of the dudes who are in this space, so I have a memory of certain things that you can't look up on Wikipedia.
And that's good that you were persistent with it, because for me, I like don't remember that story that well. So if I had asked Tony Yayo that, he would have been able to shrug it off pretty easily, because I would have just been like, whatever, like, you're kind of overpowering me in this conversation. Fuck it, I'll let you go.
Yeah, so there's a lot. So it's like, hey man, when a person sits down, my goal is to give them their biggest interview they've ever done in their life. And I remember sometimes I'll even tell them that before the interview, and they'll sort of shrug it off, and then lo and behold, it'll be the biggest interview they've ever done in their life.
Right.
That's my goal, because I only have this person for a certain period of time. Whether I pay them or not pay them, our time is valuable all around, and I'm trying to make the biggest impact that I can. So I'm going to ask as many of the tough questions as I could do. I could do as much research as I can, and really try to create this product in real time that stands the test of time, that's evergreen, that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, when all of us are gone, our ancestors could be like, oh, that's my great grandfather. That's his voice. Like,
but it's interesting that with Tony Yayo, it seems you're developing a Boosie-esque relationship where you just kind of have like a consistent podcast coming out versus like the Rico Reckless and AWOL thing, or the Ari Spears thing, where you create a separate podcast. Like, are you not in love with the podcast format versus the interview?
No. Yayo's working on his own podcast right now.
But for you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just trying to find the right guests.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, all that. BG Naka is working on his own podcast right now.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
want all my regular guests to have their own podcast on my platform, if possible.
That's cool.
If it makes sense, but not everyone. It's a lot harder to do a podcast than to just sit with Vlad and,
because with
shoot the shit for
with
2
Yayo,
hours.
you're structuring it. So we don't
Yeah.
really know, like, what does Tony Yayo sitting down with a guest talking for an hour? Like, I mean, anything could happen. We really don't know what his podcasting style might be like.
We're about to see, but we're willing to invest some money into it and see what happens. This might be. You got to understand. Like, I gave Mob James not his first interview, but his first like big interview, and that triggered a whole career for him. You know, the Gangster Chronicles. They have a deal with iHeart and so forth. Like, he's turning this into a whole career. He was just a dude. You know, a Mob Piru dude that was just used to be down with Death Row. Now he has a fully legitimate business. He pays taxes and he could support his grandson and everything else like that. Like, this is dope to me.
Right.
Even if it's not with me. If they run and do a whole thing, like Tony was like, yo, like the world gets to, I'm like reintroducing myself to the world now. Like, this is great. He loves what we've done together.
Right. No, it's dope. It's interesting when you think about, so I remember when the Caller Daddy breakup happened, that I got some insight into what Barstool's contracts look like for a sort of entry-level podcast. And I believe the deal was something like $70K a year for each host. And there were some like incentives where you could get like a couple $1,000s extra if your views went up by a certain percentage. But it's interesting because basically that allows them to, and they have this extremely robust ad sales network already, right? So they have no problem blanketing your fucking podcast in ads.
Yeah.
They get to, I don't know, maybe make millions off of that content. But also they're taking the risk that if your shit is a total flop, then they might lose money on the deal. But then also if they make $10 million, they still get to pay you $70K each per year, which is really interesting because it puts you in a business model where if it's successful, they're not going to be happy with it and they're going to want to renegotiate their contract. And if they're a failure, you take the L and they, I don't know, probably still walk away kind of pissed off.
I mean, it's like having a record label, right?
Yeah.
You don't know which artist is going to blow.
Yeah.
You know, you sign 10 artists and one of them happens to be NBA Youngboy.
Do you ever feel like, sometimes I have conflicting opinions about the space we're in because on one hand, it feels like it's so inundated that it almost feels kind of fucking lame at a certain point because sometimes it just feels like there's so many people making content that it's just overwhelming. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, being that this appears to be the new world that we live in where like, you know, YouTube content and such is like the thing, the world that everybody's trying to get into. Well, shit, at least I got 4.4 million subscribers and have a good business going. Even though I also at the same time am kind of sometimes like, holy shit, this space is kind of blown out right now.
I've never been scared of a populated space. I always feel like no matter who you are, no matter what space you're in, if you come up with a superior product, it's going to react. Like, look at Matt Hoffa. Look how late he got into the interview space and look at how well he's doing right now.
Right. He brings a lot of authenticity to it.
Right.
And his shit is super raw.
Exactly.
Which is what I like about
he's
it.
He's in the hood in a Harlem barbershop.
Because
I've interviewed on his platform before.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Fat Joe announced he's getting some talk show. You know, that him and Diddy's working on. Young Miami, the Carisha Please thing is doing really well. These are all people that came in very late in the game that are all doing well. I've never been worried about an overpopulated space because if you really think about it, Google was not the first search engine.
Right.
There was like 100 search engines before Google.
But Vlad TV was kind of the first like YouTube
right, we were.
show,
But what I'm
interview
saying
show.
is that although we were the first, I'm never going to say, hey, it's too populated right now. I need to go find myself doing something else. Like first, last, middle, it's still a grind. Like what we do is not easy. People think, oh, you just talk to people all day. No, like we have 20 employees. We have a big video team. We have admins. We have finance people. We have assistants. We got writers. We got. It's hard. I mean, it wasn't easy to lock in an interview with two Hall of Famers.
Right.
You know, Michael Irvin, Warren Sapp doing an interview. I had to fly to Dallas. We had to find a Dallas studio. We a lot of moving parts to make this dope product. A lot of money got spent. You know, a lot of money got gambled. Like, okay, if all this falls apart, I'm going to be out a bag right now. If he doesn't, one of the guys doesn't show up, if the studio fucks up, there's a lot that goes into it, and it's a constant grind, and it's always like, kind of like, you know, how Steve Jobs would think like, yo, you got to give the audience something that they didn't know they really needed. You know, some of my biggest interviews were with people that no one had ever heard of. No one had heard of Mob James. No one had heard of Keefe D. People know about Boosie, obviously, you know, so that's, you know, that's something that kind of goes against the grain. But like a lot of it is like to do these dope interviews with a totally unknown person, but the story is so incredible that you're just sucked into it. That's my goal in what I do, but it's not always a home run.
But it's interesting because it feels like a lot of different people in this space were competing on sort of parallel tracks where there's the content and then there's the business. Like, what is the stuff that the people get to see on a day-to-day basis? You know, you getting an interview with, you know, somebody that you're really excited about, me doing the same thing. That's one thing. And then there's the infrastructure, creating the business, creating something that could be bigger than yourself.
Right.
And that's kind of an interesting thing. It feels like in terms of this sort of like first generation self-owned wave of YouTube creators that you can kind of look at me, you, and Ak as the three people who have built the biggest businesses in terms of creating content that is interview-based, commentary-based, podcast-based. You know, there's other people you have to name. Like I would think of Cole Bennett as somebody who's just was like a YouTube music video director that's built an insane business off of his shit. How do you think of that?
What do you mean?
The business, the competition on the business angle of it in terms of who's building the best business, because some of the fans are in on that meta, and I see that conversation taking place where they're trying to compare all these different players. They want to say, oh, Joe Budden's network didn't work out, and yours, you have a good network going on your channel, so you should have brought that up and shoved that in his face when he was arguing with you on the show. I don't find I didn't want to get into attacking each other, but you know.
Joe could be huge if he knew how to build a business, if he knew how to actually manage a staff of people. And, you know, what you've seen with Joe is that he'll get some momentum and it'll come crashing down every time. And then he'll go and talk shit about whoever he was working with, at the time, like a Spotify or a Complex or whatever, to the point where he can't go back and revisit certain things and so forth. But, you know, my whole thing was building a business is not easy. I mean, we've been doing this for 15 years now, and actually building a staff, maintaining a staff, dealing with all the employment stuff that goes into having a staff, having full-time employees, you know, making sure they have insurance. You know, all my employees have health insurance that we pay for. They have benefits. They have paid vacation times. They have eye care. They have dental insurance. Multiple offices, equipment. All of that is hard to do without a financial system already in place to help you do it. We didn't have that. We were partnered with Complex, but they have no ownership in what we do. With them, it's just we bring the views, they bring the advertising, that's it. It doesn't go any farther than that. To try to build a business is hard, as you could see. You know, you now have an office and a bigger studio, and you have more staff. A lot of shit goes wrong along the way. You know, we've had people up and just quit the same day and just disappear on us. Like, that's just part of a business. And we only have 20 people. Imagine if we had 200 people or 2,000 people or 20,000 people. Right. It's hard to do, but if you want to build a big entity that's bigger than yourself, you have to have that structure and you have to be a CEO. You can't just be the talent.
And it's tough to do both because
it's tough to do both, which is why I'm trying to be less talent, more business, because I can't grow my business by just doing more interviews. Like, that's not sustainable.
But at the same time, in the short run, you doing a bunch of interviews is like the most profitable thing for you to do. But in the long run,
it's not.
A lot of times I look at my schedule and it's like a day like today where it's like I got to be on camera maybe for 8 hours or 7 hours. It's like that doesn't leave a lot of time for me to be, you know, maybe reviewing people who sent in audition tapes because they want to be on camera talent, or reviewing applications that have been sent in by people who might be good for us to hire, et cetera. You setting up your fucking whole studio in New York where you're able to do a bunch of different content out of there. That's all time that you're taking away from you just sitting down and doing some fucking interviews. But it can be hard to figure out that balance.
You have to know how to manage. The most successful people, like no one, when you look at the Forbes list, there's never someone that's just a one-person company or a guy with an assistant, or a girl with an assistant. It's always like, there's hundreds, there's usually thousands of people in this organization, and there's someone, the person on the list is the person that's organized all this. It's not easy to do. And I'm not the greatest person at it. I haven't always been the greatest manager. I've fucked up a lot and done a lot of, not managed people very well early on, and probably lost some people that went on to do some good things that I probably, had I managed them better, they would still be part of my organization. But back then I just wasn't very good, and I was overly emotional, and just wasn't doing things as well as I do them now. And I'm still always learning, but that's the hard part. Even I spent $1 million building my back end to have the type of system where a team of 20 people could create 13, 15 pieces of content a day. We kind of outpace everyone based on just the system that we've built and the ability to have a lot of checks and balances along the way, that wrong clips aren't getting uploaded or the wrong shit isn't being put up, wrong titles, wrong this, wrong that. Like, we used to do everything by emails. I would just email what I need, and then shit would get fucked up, and then we actually started building out and expanding the business. It's a real skill, and it takes a lot of time. This is why you see a lot of guys who, like, I don't know what Gilly and Wallow are doing, but right now it's Gilly and Wallow. It's the Gilly and Wallow show, and I don't know whether they're going to build it up into an actual bigger entity.
That's interesting you say that, because I was actually watching the interview that Dave Portnoy did with Gilly and Wallow, and Gilly and Wallow were really emphasizing that they want to create a network. They have all this talent that they want to bring in. Yeah. And Dave is somebody who has, drastically more experience with bringing talent on and working with them than you or I think. And you could just sort of hear it in his voice that he's very weathered from the experience, because he's like, it's a tough business. I'll put it that way, because everybody you bring in, keeping them on board, keeping them happy, it's got to be a lot, even though I'm sure it's a fucking great business to be in as well.
It is a lot. It is a lot, and it's hard to do. And, like you said, Joe tried to do it, I think with Karen Civil or something like that. I saw that briefly. I don't think that went anywhere.
Yeah, 2 different female-fronted shows that actually one of them left, and the other one I think just got dissolved.
The whole sexual harassment thing?
That was part of one of them.
That was part of one of them, yeah. And then the other one, it's not easy. You can't just take something, plug it on your platform, and say, okay, I'm done.
Right.
It's a lot of hits and misses, but really, it's a lot of work. And when you're already talent, it's even harder, because you're juggling that with, I got to do an interview, I got to book this interview, I got to network, I got to do all this other shit.
Those 2 podcasts not working on his network, though, is probably like the most obvious fucking outcome ever, just because it's like you probably have a 90% male audience, if I had to guess.
You're getting female, yeah.
I would think 80% male would be a lot of women for his podcast. It's just like, it's a dude-oriented podcast, right? And then you start 2 female-oriented podcasts. Let's be real. Dudes don't listen to female-fronted podcasts very often. It's possible, but it's very unlikely.
Yeah, we have like a 90% male.
Right.
And I feel for people like Shirley, who's coming in with a female voice on our platform, and I think part of the pushback that she gets, unfortunately, is because she's a female. Just point blank, period. She's a female, and there's a bunch of males listening who may not want to hear a female voice. Lunel sort of crosses that bridge a little bit easier, because she's already a Vlad TV regular guest, and she's an established like actress / stand-up comedian, and there's a lot of familiarity and so forth, and she's a little bit older. But man, it's hard being a female in a male-oriented thing. It's challenging being a white person in a black-oriented genre or whatever else. But it's like, what are you gonna do? Cry about it? Oh no, things are so hard for me. I have to work twice as hard as everyone else. Fuck it, tough it out, man up, like woman up. Clearly, there's examples of people that have done it already, so you could do it too.
The thing that has made our network, quote unquote, actually work is that we started finding people, bringing them in, and then I actually put myself in a fucking group chat with them, and we started talking every day and really like forced ourselves to have an actual relationship, and then allowed a lot of that to play out on camera. And sometimes it gets super fucking messy where we're having issues with each other and everything. But I feel like that's where we've found something that the audience is really kind of invested in over time. And it's kind of like the more people we bring in, it becomes more of a challenge, because sometimes it's like we get somebody on and it's like there's too many personalities. It's like maybe we can't put this person in the same fucking group chat. But that's, it's going to be hard to scale. But that's kind of the idea, I guess, overall.
Yeah, but you've had it's trial and error, right? You try some shit. I'm sure a lot of it is flopped.
Yeah.
But then you get that gem. You get was it Sharp?
Yep.
He seemed like he's taken off. AD seems like it worked.
For sure.
And there's probably people that you try that aren't around anymore. We've tried. There's been lots of regular guests that started out well and it fizzled out. And we might bring them back after a year or two, or we might not. But then there's the Boosies of the world that, how would I have known that Boosie was going to end up the way Boosie ends up with Vlad TV?
Right.
Like the Jordan and Scottie Pippen, the Shannon Sharp and what's his name? The white dude that was Shannon Sharp.
I don't know.
Anyways, that guy.
Right.
I'm having a brain fart. But what I'm saying is like who the fuck knew that was me and Yayo? Who the fuck
Skip
knew?
Bayless?
Skip Bayless. There we go.
I don't watch any of this shit.
Thank you.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, Shannon Sharp. Yeah, people compared me and Boosie to Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. Right. But who would have known that me and Yayo would like me and Yayo had problems before that interview.
Really?
Yeah, because I'd put up a video that he didn't like about him, and he said some shit about me on Twitter about it. And it was like, Yayo's sort of known to be a live wire. So when we first met up, I had my armed security in there with us, and like, just in case there was some fuck shit. And there was some tense moment in that interview, like the whole, shut the fuck up, Vlad. Like, about that
face
that face.
That's his Twitter picture now?
And I'm like, I know Yayo. I know Yayo's history. I know this is a dude that doesn't just talk about it, and things could go very left. But me and him do have a history, and there was sort of an after-the-fact conversation of, hey, yeah, what you did then bothered me, but like 50 always told me, when you sign a record deal, when you become a public figure, you become public property. So you can't take that shit. You can't take everything someone posts personally when it's their job to post.
Right.
Right? And we talked about it. I'm like, yo, this is 50 posted some very, what I felt was some fucked up shit about me. Whatever. It's their job. They got a piece of content that was going to react. They ran with it.
Right.
Sometimes we get it wrong. I posted a story, a video with a dude who claimed he got shot in the car with 50 Cent and used to be the president of Murder Inc. Sean Prez did the interview. He brought the guy to me. He said he was legit. Guy ended up just being a weird, compulsive liar, like a weirdo.
You took it down?
Of course.
Oh, wow.
But 50 put up a thing on his Instagram that said fraudulent.
Wow.
Across it. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Does that feel kind of like a weird decision, though? Because you're removing something that's actually kind of an important part of the record of how the scenario played out. But to leave it up would be you kind of like co-signing bullshit.
Well, no, but the whole thing was bullshit.
Right.
But
the fact that interview even exists, though, is kind of part of the public record at a certain point, that it's kind of historically important, maybe down the road.
Not when it's false. Yeah. Not when it's totally wrong. Because I remember, this wasn't an interview I did. This was brought to me by a guy that we trust, that I still deal with every day, who claimed the dude was legit without doing his own due diligence and without me doing the due diligence as the CEO, which is what I should have done. But I remember when 50 posted the shit, I called him Ja Rule. And I'm like, do you know who this guy is? And Ja was like, I have no idea who this is. I've never seen him before in my life. Fuck. I called him Chris Gotti, Irv Gotti's brother. I'm like, do you know who this is? No idea. So I was like, when we get it wrong, we'll take it down.
Right.
When we make a mistake, we will take it down. We're not going to fuck. Like, no. If we get it wrong, we will take it down. If we have to do a retraction, we'll do a retraction. But we will get it wrong. I remember and then 50 posted up a picture when me and him were sort of not on the best terms, like posted a picture of this dude, Mafi, who does some talent booking for us, and said, yeah, this is Vlad TV's man right here who just got $150 on his face. That's what Vlad gets. Fuck around with that street shit. I remember I called the mafia. I'm like, yo, are you okay? He goes, nothing's happened to me. Like, I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Like, no one's touched me.
He just made that up for fun?
I don't think he made it up. Someone probably told him, gave him the wrong information. So when we pushed back, we're like, this is wrong, he just took it down. And that was it.
But putting something like that out there about somebody who's not really a public figure is a pretty wild use of social media account as big as his.
50's pretty wild, man. 50 is said some wild shit over
When you look
the years.
at how he chooses to use his platform, there's a lot of things that you're just like, wow, that's kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, man. 50 is a one of one.
But so the Yayo relationship's not going to one day turn into a 50 Cent interview? If you were a betting man, do you think it would happen?
It might. I mean, there's been a discussion around that.
Really?
Yeah, with 50. Not with me and 50, but with me talking through someone. Like, me and 50 haven't talked together in quite a while, probably like maybe 10 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We just don't particularly have a reason, but there's been a conversation with 50 doing a Vlad TV interview, and he understands the significance of that. It's not like, when he does the Breakfast Club and he's promoting Tycoon Weekend, it's different than if he sits down with me. It's going to be a different type of interview, and he understands that. So will it happen one day? Will it not? I don't know. Our budgets keep getting bigger and bigger. Like, the amount of money we spent on that Warren Sapp, Michael Irving thing was more than we've ever spent on an internet. Like, the total production of it and the amount of money that got spent was bigger than any production we've ever done before. But the final product is dope. So ultimately, we feel it'll pay for itself over time.
Right.
At some point, I feel that we'll be in a position to pay $1 million for an interview.
Jesus.
$100,000 for an interview. There's already been discussions around that.
Wow.
Right. Although we haven't. Yeah. There's never been deals that have been like we've never. There's no interviews that are out that we paid that much.
Who's worth $1 million? Who's even close?
Who's worth $1 million?
$1 million?
An OJ tell-all.
Okay. Yeah. Damn.
An OJ tell-all talking about the exactly what happened in the murder, his role in it.
Wow.
Which he kind of did in the book. If I did it, remember?
I heard about it. Yeah,
I read it. I read passages from the book.
Was it disturbing?
That.
Did it feel like it was actually what happened?
Somewhat. I don't know how. I mean, he talked about the night of the murder, and I guess there was another person involved in the killing of his wife and the other guy, Ron Goldman. For OJ to sit down and say, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened at every point in detail.
If you wanted to be in the conversation, $1 million probably is where you're going to have to be at, because that's what the fucking TV networks and shit might be offering, right?
Well, we've had a conversation with OJ's guy. Like, I talked, me and OJ were DMing, essentially.
I DM'd him too. That's funny.
Yeah.
And I got a nice civil response. Who knows if it was him or an assistant, but saying, I'm not doing interviews at this time, but I'll let you know in the future.
He actually referred the guy that handles that, and me and the guy had a conversation, and we were talking about doing the interview, and we were talking about, in the 6 digits. But his thing was that OJ doesn't want to talk about the entire year that the whole murder occurred. He just wants that taken out of the conversation.
I'm sure he would want that. Yeah. Well, I'm not paying $100,000 for fucking you not talking about the interesting part of your life.
It wasn't $100,000. It was more than $100,000.
Okay.
So I'm not going to spend that type of money and have that black hole, just be empty from that. Listen, when we interviewed Sammy the Bull,
right,
we paid a significant amount of money for that interview, and it took 2 years to put that interview together because they didn't want to do the interview we wanted to do.
Because you wanted to be able to ask him about every murder.
Yeah.
And he had done other interviews beforehand, though, but did you feel like they left a lot on the table?
Well,
I didn't watch any of his other ones. I watched yours.
No one did it in the way that I did it, right? And then even the day of, there was almost a walkout in the process because he didn't want to talk about a bunch of shit. Oh. His granddaughter was there. His granddaughter was sort of like the voice of reason that actually made all this happen. So shout out to Sammy's granddaughter, a very cool young lady. But it was like when we got down to it, the final compromise before we turn on the camera was we could talk about everything except for the murder of his brother-in-law, his wife's brother, and the whole ecstasy bust in Arizona, which he had a deal, I think, with National Geographic to talk about that.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, I could live with that.
Yeah.
I could live with excluding those two things, but everything else I'm asking about.
Wow.
And he answered.
Yeah.
And the interview was huge. You know, the full interview is always like in our trending list on, even months after, like millions and millions of people watched it. And although he's done other interviews, it's just not the way I do it.
Right.
And my audience, and my thing was like, I'm going to give my audience what they expect from me.
Right.
And if it takes 2 years to negotiate that, it'll take 2 years to negotiate it.
Well, giving the audience what they want or what they expect, that's kind of a good lead into the next topic, which is kind of a boring topic, but it's the other thing that we basically got into it about on that Joe Budden podcast, which is basically talking about street shit, talking about crime, etc., with gangster rappers and the concept of it being vulture-ish. For me, the only thing that I need to say to defend it is that I think that's what my audience wants to hear. And I do my part to be respectful and to not get anyone in trouble. That's never my intention. I let everybody know that they could have stuff removed if they wanted to. But for me, if somebody's going to put conflict on their Instagram story or in their songs, or it's going to be in the news, or if it's in any way part of the public narrative, I don't feel any kind of shame about asking about it. I want to give my fans what they want to know. And if somebody's got something to say about some rapper they don't get along with in a song, I don't want to hype up and cause more violence, but I also feel comfortable asking them about it.
As a serious interviewer, you are allowed to ask anyone anything that you want. Do you think that 60 Minutes, when they sit down, they're scared to ask a question like, that might lead into something? Or you think Barbara Walters was scared to ask questions? Like,
right.
You could ask whatever you want.
That's what makes you great.
Yeah, that's
having
what,
the will to do it.
The will and the guts to do it. Like, it all seems easy to do this shit until you actually are sitting in front of the person and the cameras are rolling and you have a limited amount of time and you have uncomfortable questions to ask. Because a lot of it is like, I remember Jamel Hill. This is the one thing, we talked about this that we were both on the same page with, about how interviewing is less so of a skill and more of a craft. Right? You can you can get a master's degree or a PhD in interviewing, and it won't be the same as someone who's been interviewing for 10 years.
Right. There's a lot of ways to be great at it, right?
A lot of ways to be great at it. And you could ask anyone anything by figuring out how to ask them. That doesn't mean they're going to answer it.
Right.
But like, like I brought up with Tony Yayo, like remember there's that viral list of the 50 worst rappers ever. Tony was on that list. Like, I'm not going to sit down with Yayo and like the first thing to say, so tell me about you being number 42 on the whack rapper list. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's all about that lead up.
But I managed to get that question in without offending him.
Right.
And having him respond to the question.
Once you get them to a place where you're talking about so many different things that just seems like another thing on the list. Like, hey, people are talking about this. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying people are talking about it.
That's not easy to do, man. I remember me and NLE Choppa, he goes, something about your voice and your approach like really gets people to open up. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, 15 years, like you kind of learn a certain type of way to do things. But it's not, you can ask anyone anything. And you could be like, I always forget his name, the little
Nardwar.
dude. No. The guy I interviewed with the gold teeth that wouldn't answer shit.
Peewy Longway?
Peewy Longway, right. Yeah. Like the Peewy Longway interview was so legendary because he denied everything.
Yeah.
And he like made jokes about it and said, man, I didn't do none of that street shit. I was a school kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, that made it even better.
That was funny, but if somebody else were to do that again, it would probably just be lame, right? If they tried to do the same joke.
Yeah, because it was done so well by this dude who was like a character.
Right.
He's like, what, 4'10" or something?
But I hear people compliment Peewy Longway on handling that interview that way as if other people should do the same thing. I'm like, listen, it's not going to be funny if you do it. Also, Vlad probably won't even put it out if you do it because it's going to be so unfunny.
I mean, You don't have to answer anything.
Right.
Next topic. I've been asked lots of shit that I don't want to answer. I'll bring up things before the interview that I don't want to talk about, and the person will respect it. Same thing with like Matt Hoffa didn't want to talk about certain things. 600 Breezy, like, yo, let's not talk about this. Cool. We won't even mention it.
Right.
Not a big deal. There's no guns to your head. There's no hidden cameras. No one, we don't. There's no gotcha moments. We're not I've never recorded someone's phone call and put it out.
Right.
Ever. I always think that's lame. And anyone who's done that to me, I don't fuck with that person.
I couldn't
afterwards.
imagine. That's
crazy.
crazy.
It's lame.
Yeah. Illegal in some cases.
Yeah. Although being a public figure it's usually legal pretty much fucking everywhere, which is annoying. But it's all about, I'm going to ask whatever I want to ask, and it's up to that person to answer it. And I tried to be as careful as I can. I'm not going to ask a person about a murder unless they've already done time for that murder.
Right.
In which case, Sammy the Bull could talk about all the murders he wants.
Right.
He got a plea deal. He did his time. He's earned the right with his own life, giving up parts of his life to talk about the murders that he did and then monetize it.
But the sort of specific claim that I get the most recently that I don't think has a lot of legs is that there's something wrong about asking a rapper about his ops, asking a gang member about somebody who is in another gang, because that's a situation that could actually cause violence. Now, my attitude, there's been a lot of stuff I've had to cut out over the years where people use basically like gang slurs. I don't want my platform to really be used to incite violence in that way. There's been people that we've removed from the platform because of the fact that they kind of used it in that way. I think that that's where it does get touchy, because you're talking to artists, you're talking to public figures, but then a lot of times these guys also you might be talking about the rap, but there's also this layer of street violence that is maybe not what you're talking about, but might get activated as a result of this conversation, right?
Try to be as careful as possible, but most times you're usually not breaking a new piece of information. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're talking about, I don't know, 22 G's beefing with whoever he beefs with,
right?
It's because he's already been beefing with him online. He may expand on it a little bit, but he's already talked about this shit.
And the other thing is that 9 times out of 10, if you say, hey, 22 G's, you posted this on your Instagram story where you said, fuck this gang and fuck this rapper and yada, yada, yada. I've never, and he says insanely aggressive things in his music. I've never seen an interview clip with him where he had 10% of that. Like they leave that shit at home. It's like it's standard now. You say crazy ass shit in the studio, and you throw up crazy ass gang signs saying that you fuck the other side in videos. But then when you come to do the interview, how many guys have you really had? You've got all kinds of drill rappers sitting there. How many guys have you really heard express extreme hatred, their real feelings about their enemies? They don't really do it like that.
I mean, 600 Breezy pretty much gets pretty unfiltered in what he does.
But even someone like him, it's like he's not threatening them on the podcast.
No.
He's smart enough to know that that's going to get him in hot water.
He's not threatening. I mean, but he's been, when he threatened Tekashi, he went to jail over that shit.
Yeah,
because
so he's learned his lesson. Yeah.
Tekashi's people have turned him in. It wasn't because of what he said on our platform. I remember he said, I remember in our last interview, we talked about jail, and he talked about how, in previous interviews, he talked about how he ran the jail and stuff like that when he was in there. And I asked him about that, and he kind of reiterated what he said. And then he just happened to get locked up afterwards. And then when he got there, the jail dudes were like, oh, I seen the Vlad TV shit. You can go in solitary for a while. And he ended up in fucking solitary. Well, he didn't blame me for this shit. He's like, I'd been talking about this shit. The fact they picked your interview out of a series of interviews that I talked about it just happens to be, whatever, a coincidence, or maybe you're the slightly bigger platform.
Well, a lot of dudes get out of jail and they feel like they're never going to go back, so they might as well talk about everything.
I think him going back was sort of just like he was surprised it happened.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, everyone's here to do a job. No one's being forced to do anything. We all try to be careful, but to me, the lame shit about Joe is this. I may not like certain people because of things they've said about me, or maybe we had a bad interaction or whatever, but I have never in my life bash someone's business and how they do their business and how they conduct their interviews, how they run their business or whatever else, that's their business. You know what I'm saying? How they choose to build up their company and how they make their money, that's their business. Who am I to start telling Joe how to conduct interviews, who his co-host should be, what kind of questions he should ask? It's fucking lame and it's stupid. But he somehow has built a platform over criticizing other people's platforms. I feel like that's when Joe goes viral, by criticizing other content creators on how they create content. Right. It's fucking stupid. It's lame.
I think it's lame when it's like aesthetic concerns or when it's just sort of frivolous concerns. If somebody really has an issue ethically with the way that you're holding court in an interview, that's one thing. My problem is that so often this is just like a general comment of like, oh, you're the feds, or you ask questions, or you talk about street shit or whatever. It's like, give me an example. Give me a specific example where I said something to someone that you thought was really out of line. Because people always want to throw that on you, but then the specific example is usually missing.
Even if there is a specific example, Joe's opinion on how I conduct my interviews is probably as important as my opinion on what he should eat for lunch today.
Right.
Just to keep it totally 100.
But his response would be, I'm a participant in hip hop. I care about these rappers.
Whatever.
You don't care about young black lives, Vlad.
Whatever. Conduct your fucking business how you want to do it, and I'll conduct mine. Anyone, and it's not just about Joe, because lots of people have come forward. Oh, Vlad needs to be eliminated, canceled, muted. No one should go on his platform. Stop going on his platform. Call him whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck. Unless you are a shareholder in the business, unless you're at an executive level on Vlad TV, your opinion doesn't matter one fucking iota. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm the CEO and I'm going to decide how we're going to roll things out. You could talk all you want, but like I said, what Joe eats for lunch today is not dependent on what I think he should eat for lunch today.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And his opinion on how I should do an interview, who I should interview, how I should do an interview, doesn't fucking matter. Not even one little tiny bit at all. And really, he knows that it doesn't matter, but he knows that he'll get a lot of views on his platform by saying stuff like that, because then I might respond at some later point and then, oh, okay, look, whatever. It starts a dialogue.
It does feel like, and I hate to be doing like a victory lap or anything, but it felt like in seeing the reaction to that podcast that I was kind of like impressed with the fans, because I feel like maybe that same conversation happens in like 2017 and the fans just get behind him because the optics of a black guy telling a white guy that he's using his platform in a fucked up way is probably pretty compelling to a lot of people, regardless of the actual facts. And the fact that so many people were able to see that that argument was not really a serious argument, I felt like that says something good about people's critical thinking within the space.
Well, I think, you know, and I watched little bits of it. Like, I've never actually watched the whole Joe Budden podcast in my life, but I watched little bits of it because I feel in a way he was trying to get at me through you.
Totally, 100%. Yeah.
Right? It just is what it is.
I quite often feel like people are kind of like using me or act for stand-ins of each other. You know?
Right. And my whole thing was that you didn't punk out. You actually passionately defended your position. And everything they threw at you, you aggressively defended your position. And a lot of times, because academics told me something interesting, because I interviewed on his platform recently.
Right.
And he's talking about all the various people he's had beef with, like, let's just say like a Nav, right? That's now on his platform after 2 years of back and forth and whatever else. It's like, people are always going to try to down you and whatever, especially if you're reporting on them or talking about them. And it's not until the point where you sometimes push back and make them respect your stance. Because if they can't respect you for doing your job, they're just not going to respect you. Yeah. So the fact that you defended your position and said, nah, like, yes, I do that, and I stand behind doing that. Right. And I'm going to explain why I do that. And, you know, it was like a 3-on-1. Like, your initial reaction was that it was icky. And it's like, yeah, but then I thought about it, and I realized, actually, It actually makes perfect sense.
And in that moment, it is almost maybe a mistake because I'm like opening the door for them to call this out. But I'm acknowledging that I thought about something and my opinion changed, which people don't even want to hear that. They want you to have an opinion, stick with it for the rest of your life, and never change your opinion based on incoming
information. But your initial reaction, because it was that should be your reaction for the rest of your life. No, it's like, no, I thought about it.
Too many people think like that. Too many people get on board with a political party or a mentality, and then they stick with it, and everything has to be tailored to that.
Yeah, and for example, like I don't usually respond, but every so often it's like, all right, NLE Choppa was talking shit to me. I start talking shit right back.
Right.
It ended in a dope interview where everyone looked good.
Right.
When we sat down and actually talked about everything, all the uncomfortable shit, all the back and forth disses that he did to me, that I did to him, as well as all the weird stuff. I'm not going to say the weird stuff because that's actually an unfair thing, but the stuff that he was saying about medical, his medical philosophies that I disagreed with, like we agreed to disagree. I actually had a doctor come in and actually make a video addressing some of the things that he said. The doctor was agreeing with some things and disagreeing with certain things. It's like, had I not pushed back, there wouldn't be sort of a level of respect from him. Like, okay, Vlad is not going to just sit down and take this shit. You know what I'm saying? He's actually going to stand up for himself. Like, when Young Blue was bashing me and saying, oh, Vlad is just wants me and Boosie to fight with each other because he's white. And I'm like, fuck this shit. This has nothing to do with this. And I laid out my reasoning. Blue called me on the phone. And we had like an hour and a half conversation. And now me and him are actually talking. He's a big artist now.
It's tempting as the interviewer to just sort of ignore the conversation about you because it's going to happen eventually, and most of the people doing it are just random ass fucking people. It's like, and you very much know that there could be a whole huge conversation about you today, 10,000 different people talking about you, and you ignore it for like 48 hours, and then it's like it doesn't even matter anymore at all, and you can just keep it moving. But at a certain point, it's like, you got to do battle if you want people to take you seriously. It's just like being a rapper where if Lil Durk was getting dissed on records by somebody and he didn't in some way respond on a song, then everybody's going to start looking at him like, oh, he doesn't want the smoke with that specific person.
The one thing it seems like I've heard in this whole video game thing is that there's a lot of people with deep-seated trauma who feel that losing themselves in a video game helps their depression. But from my point of view, that whatever causes that depression will still be there when you turn that console off.
Right.
So you're sort of proving my point by arguing with me. You're proving my point by arguing. So whatever fucked up shit you're going through, I'm sorry that I've pointed out that you're using video games to deal with it.
Right.
I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel about it. So prove me wrong if you want. And it's not going to apply to every person. It's not a ubiquitous statement that applies to every single human being, but it applies to millions of people. I would say you wouldn't see that type of reaction over that tweet if millions of people didn't somehow get triggered off of a level of truth in what I'm saying.
Right. I feel it. Me and you have both been vocally anti-Trump.
Yeah.
Since the beginning.
Yeah.
It has been a little interesting in rap music to see. I mean, just look at how controversial it was for Kanye when he was a Trump supporter back in the day. Now you see all kinds of popular rappers coming out basically saying they fuck with Trump. The mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's kind of a strange new paradigm that we're living in where he's getting more support, even though it would appear that his political career is more in shambles now than it's ever been in. I mean, he's getting his fucking home raided by the FBI and whatnot. It's like there's all kinds of new reasons to not like Trump, particularly if you like care about the future of a democracy with the whole, try to steal the election and everything. How do you feel about seeing, certain black people starting to resonate with him?
Well, academics told me he would vote for Trump.
I know. I was kind of disturbed by that.
Yeah, I mean, me and him went back and forth a little bit about it, but number one, Trump's not in office anymore.
Right.
So he's really just a social media personality now on Truth.
On Truth Social, yeah.
Social. and, man, listen, man, you got to hand it to this man. Like Trump really, watching Trump do what he does by getting caught in so many lies and then just insulting the person who caught him in the lie. it made me think like, yo, I've been wasting my time telling the truth all these years. Like, actually, like, I could have just like the lie. He'll tell a lie. Oh, Elon Musk voted for me. Elon Musk, that's not true. You're a failing company, and I helped save your company. You were on your knees begging me for tax breaks. It's like, so you're not going to address the fact that he just called you a liar. You're going to now criticize him. And it's a very interesting type of thing. The man that's known, who's been caught in the most lies of any president, starts a social media platform after getting kicked off of Twitter. And what does he call it?
Truth Social.
You gotta love it. Like,
nobody has done more to normalize lying than Donald Trump in my lifetime, certainly, and I really feel like probably throughout the history of America.
History. And the thing is, at this point, look, like, he's no longer in office. There's a reasonable chance with these FBI raids that he'll never be in office, because if he gets convicted of the Espionage Act, even if it's like a very lesser charge that he pleads guilty to, that bars him from ever running for public office again for the rest of his life. He is still very much a needle mover in terms of people he gets behind and everything else like that. But look, right now we're not doing well financially. The stock market is in shambles. Inflation is going crazy. We're spending lots of money in the war, the Ukrainian-Russian war. Housing prices are going up. Rental prices are going through the fucking roof. Like, we don't have it as well as when Trump was in office. Not necessarily this is Joe Biden's fault, but ultimately when things go bad, what do people do? They blame the president, right? So yeah, people are upset with Biden right now, and Trump doesn't look quite as bad because he's not there doing anything. But I remember just the daily of like, what the fuck is he gonna say today? Like, what the fuck is he gonna do today? Like, what, you know? I was definitely nervous during that election when it looked like he was about to win. Like, my household was tense. And luckily he didn't win. But yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know how much money in the stock world academics has, but I mean, my stock portfolio is kind of fucked up right now. So I could see where, if that's sort of your main concern, you may think like, yo, we may need someone like that back just so financially I'm better off again. You know, a lot of people are fucked up right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that's kind of unfortunate about it, is that a lot of people just clearly resonate with Trump's conversational style and his attitude, and the fact that he's clearly a very flawed person and that he doesn't expect to be judged for that. I think that's very attractive to a lot of people. A lot of people have been bad people during their life, and now they think they're a good person, and they don't want to have to, you know, be held accountable for their worst sins. And Trump is kind of the, you know, he's a man without shame, and that's very attractive to a lot of people.
Well, look, like the rumor, because when they raided Mar-a-Lago, they found a bunch of the missing documents that he claimed he didn't have. But there was also folders of missing documents that didn't have the actual papers in them. So the theory is that he has hidden a bunch of those documents in Ivana Trump's coffin.
That's the theory.
That's the theory. And to back up the theory, and this is just a theory, I don't know if it's true, Ivana Trump was cremated. So why was there like 8 pallbearers carrying her coffin when there's nothing in there?
Where are you getting this information?
This was just a theory that was floating around.
But like on InfoWars or like on CNN?
No, not on CNN.
Okay.
No, this is some Reddit shit.
Okay.
Right? And he buried her on his own golf course. Who does that? It would seem to me that there's some shit hidden in that coffin that he could have access to because it's on his own property, and it's probably hard to get a search warrant for a coffin, to exhume a coffin.
Oh, fuck that. We got to dig that bitch up. Let's
you know
go.
what I'm saying? Well, you got to break into his residence, right?
I'm down. I know a bunch of grave robbers.
All right, well, then.
I got friends in low places, man.
I bet. So that's the theory, man. And think about it. Would it really be that off-brand if you find out that it happened?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I don't know if it's true or not.
I would never believe that about Joe Biden, but for sure believe it about him.
Right.
Wow. Crazy.
Yep.
Vlad, I appreciate you.
Of course, man.
I've said it before. It may or may not have been edited out of the Joe Budden podcast that we're discussing, but pretty much the most influential, formative figure in what the hip-hop, internet, and greater culture would look like. And You know, you just like terminally do not get the credit that you deserve for your contribution. But I just want to give you your flowers now.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. I don't think anyone's ever said that before. And you're ultimately not going to get the flowers that you feel you deserve. Like, you've never been nominated for anything.
No.
You know, and you have like, and it is sort of like a good old boys network.
Oh yeah.
To a certain degree. Like, you know, you see, like, I think like Carisha Please got nominated for, I think like a BET award or BET Hip Hop award or something like that. She probably has 3 or 4 interviews under her belt.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
But you know, she's on Revolt. Puffy's behind the project. They're dating and so forth. So certain things are maneuvered to make it look a certain type of way. And listen, I think what she does is dope.
I don't even know who this is.
Young Miami.
Oh, her.
Her talk show.
Okay.
Her interview platform.
I haven't seen it,
yeah. She's nominated. You and I have never been nominated.
Right.
You know, all the years we're
not playing the game.
We're not playing the game.
We probably wouldn't be great politicians.
No, we're not playing the game. We don't have certain engines behind what we do to make us look and prop us up to a certain type of way. But I accepted that a long time ago, and we're financially compensated for what we do.
Right.
You know, I remember 50 said sort of the same thing, where he said that he learned off the bat that he wasn't going to get all the awards that he felt he should have deserved. So fuck it. The numbers are going to speak for themselves. The sales are going to speak for themselves. The money he gets is going to speak for itself. And whether or not he gets, you know, like Power doesn't get nominated and whatever else, but it's like, but it's not like the money is not there. Like,
right.
Yo, you're going to get compensated. You have to be happy with the money because you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to win the awards, trying to win the praise of certain people. Like, some people are just not going to fuck with you because of how you look, how you were born, what someone else has said about you, whatever else. And I've noticed that trying to convince that person that no, they're mistaken about who you are is a waste of time, because even if you all get to a good place, that person will ultimately probably go back to how they thought before.
Right.
So it's like, it's ultimately about the fans. It's ultimately about the business. It's about the impact, whatever. The trophies and all that shit, I'm assuming won't come. At least won't come in my lifetime. And that's okay. Like,
I've never even considered it. So if
Really?
it happened, it would be a weird feeling. Like if all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm nominated for BET Best Interviewer, like a category I've never paid attention to in my whole life, besides just hearing like Ack talk about it on stream, like how he wasn't nominated for, I don't know, whatever the fuck they were nominated, news platform or whatever. Like, I've never been like even driven by anything like that. Like I've never really watched awards shows or thought about that much. So it's kind of weird for me to even consider it. And it's weird. I'm just so under the assumption that these companies don't really have a lot of dedication to the truth, that I just am so used to not taking it serious. It would be weird if you actually started to view it as a real, you know, barometer of where the culture is at, because it's so far from that now.
well, I mean, my thing is you should look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Who's bringing in the numbers? Who's bringing in the viewers? Who's bringing the audience?
Yeah, that should be conversation number one.
Yeah, like
Then you talk about cultural
once
relevance
once you get those numbers together, once you get that group of people based on the numbers together, then you could sort of shift,
Right.
you know, sift through those and come up with something that I think makes sense overall. But that's not usually the case, you know. And it just is what it is. Like, I stopped getting frustrated about it a long time ago because I realized that I'm just not going to be in these conversations, and that's cool, because the people that are in those conversations, you know, I remember like me and Van Lathan were talking the other day. We kind of had this heated sort of discussion over some other shit, and he was like, I never want to be the guy that has to have security, right? And you know, that's how he's trying to basically build up his career.
I seen him doing cardio on Wilshire, jogging by himself. I couldn't believe it. So he's definitely outside. He don't got security. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And like he's trying to build his career a certain type of way with a certain type of image, and he does certain things and doesn't do certain things based on that. I'm a little bit different. I understand that the things I do I will need security
Right.
in certain situations. Like he's never anywhere without security. I'm in certain places with security. I understand the roles that we both play and how we both have maneuvered our careers, and we're both happy with the outcome. He has an Oscar, right? Which is great. For me, an Oscar is not important. I'd rather have, if you tell me, like, do you want an Oscar or $100 million? I'll take the $100 million.
I've never even thought about an Oscar. What the fuck does he have an Oscar for?
A short film.
Oh, wow.
A short film that the Netflix ended up purchasing.
But are you planning on going like documentary in the future? Like, could you ever see yourself doing that?
Well, I've done documentaries, and ultimately they weren't financially lucrative. It was a cool project to
But you
do.
could get an Oscar, apparently.
I can maybe get an Oscar, but you're ultimately building something up. Once again, the asset business versus the service business. When you do shit with Netflix, you're ultimately being a service business because you're creating this product. They buy it outright.
Right.
They own it probably forever, and you never see a royalty payment anymore. But you get a big enough check where you think it's worth it. For me, it's not worth it. Like, I remember Mona Scott is doing this hip hop homicide series, which I think I actually pitched to her some years back anyways. And like, they wanted to license a bunch of my shit, like some FPG deduction. I'm like, I'm good. No, thanks. So we're going to do something kind of like that. Like, we already had plans to do something like that on my platform. I'd rather do some shit on my own, using my own content, as opposed to sell it to her where they could use it forever. They don't pay me what it's really worth. And they have a whole thing that they could repurpose and whatever else. Like, these projects are cool. Like when I did American Gangster for BET on Mac Dre, it was a very amazing piece of work, but I've never seen a royalty statement for that, a royalty payment for that. When I did Ghost Ride the Whip, I never saw a royalty payment for that. So all that stuff is cool, I think, to stroke your own ego, but it rarely pays off what it's really worth over the type of work that you put into it. And all these guys that have gone that route are not financially even remotely in the space that I am. Right. And I'd rather do it the other way. I don't have any Oscars. I don't have any things on Netflix or Amazon or whatever else. But income-wise, control-wise, ownership-wise, I'm winning.
That's probably the best way to think of it, honestly. Doing a documentary is the difference between like being a farmer and building your own farm versus going and doing manual labor for somebody with a really nice farm.
Yeah, that you get paid really nicely for.
Netflix has a great farm.
Yeah.
And it could definitely open some doors for a lot of people. But if you already have a farm that, hey, maybe it's not Netflix, but maybe it's 1% of Netflix, shit, you might as well focus on your farm.
Focus on your own farm, yeah.
There it is.
There it is.
Lessons. Vlad TV, DJ Vlad.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
Much love.
Peace.
No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, etc. Like, comment, subscribe. NoJumper.com if you want to support. Drop a comment down below. I'm interested to hear what everybody got to say about this. See you on Reddit.